I heard something. Yeah, there you
go. Oh, hang on a second. What is wrong with this? Hang on.
Pop filter.
Do I have to talk directly into it? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Is it? Yeah.
It's an improvement.
But seriously, can you hear me or no?
More when you face the microphone.
It's literally 2 inches from my mouth, so it means I'm gonna have to change my mic settings.
It's like when Tay Zonde was breathing to the side to make sure that we didn't hear the breathing when he was singing.
Oh, okay.
Chocolate rain. Okay. Well, nobody's here to know that you don't know what chocolate rain was.
I remember what that was.
Okay.
How about
Blast from the past coming at you quick.
Is this better?
Yes, it is much better.
All right. Hi. Long time no see.
Yeah. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Tonight. Wow. Tonight's episode is actually brought to you by. Oh, hang on a sec. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? How's it going, Raven?
I'm okay. So tonight's episode is actually brought to you by sarsaparilla and friendship tests. So
Rufus Xavius sarsaparilla?
yes,
And Albert Andreas sarsaparilla?
yeah.
You remember what those are from?
No.
Pronouns were made to take the place of a noun, because saying those nouns over and over can really get you down. Schoolhouse Rock. I can't believe you didn't know that one.
But
So friendship tests.
yeah.
So here's one. Like, if I were to say that Republicans will tell you verbatim that they are not going to touch Social Security, is that something that they would say?
Oh, they've said
Absolutely, that is something they would say.
not something they would do,
But it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
So and that's getting right at the crux of today's issue. Now, the last I would say week and a half has been actually rough for me when it comes to friends. I still have a very close friend at work who no longer works with me. She quit, and it's sad, and I miss her. And she lives right here in town. She literally is 15 minutes away, not even 15 minutes away. But I got a feeling that we won't be seeing much of each other unless I hunt her down. And if I'm right, that's really sad. Number one. And number two, it's even sadder because I won't hunt her down. I don't chase. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. So there's that. And now today I have actually unfriended Meridian Frost. 15 years of friendship, and that's sad. It's pretty sad. I'm really down about it. He was supposed to be the guest tonight, and it's not Small Dino, the tiny dinosaur. It is not her. She is still at work, and she is still my friend, and he has been to my house. So,
Josh was to your house?
I'm sorry?
Josh was to your house?
No.
Oh, who was?
Tiny dinosaur.
Oh, okay, cool.
So anyway, so Josh and I guess you could say we had a falling out. I don't know if that's really the right way to phrase it. It feels more like now I see more of who he really is, I guess. Agent of Doubt, you sound like you're familiar with the thread that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and the follow-up thread that I'm looking at from 10 hours ago.
So I have come to the determination that I do not like grappling ignorance. Um,
Hmm.
if you're looking at the follow-up thread, which is Meridian Frost's, and you look at the comments of grappling ignorance and my back and forth with him, you'll see that he argues dishonestly. And considering the amount of time that I've known him, considering the amount of time he and I and Meridian Frost have had discussions with Christians about, intellectual honesty, and I expected better from him. But I mean, like he said in one post, that male and female, are that their definitions are what they are, and basically, it's dishonest or whatever to argue. I mean, I should probably just go directly to it, but I don't want to. I don't want to say something that would be considered, dishonest myself. I don't.
Yeah, what bothered me the most about it, I mean, there's a lot that bothered me, but the thing that really kind of stuck out in my mind is that you and Eric and Peach were all posting things that J.K. Rowling said on
Right.
various forums.
Right.
And Josh posts one thing that she said that was like not anti-trans, and it's like, well, she said this. Like, yeah, but she said all this other shit too.
Right.
So
And even the thing that he's holding up as an example, of her not being trans, that in itself is actually problematic, because she was talking about trans women that were abused by men, because in her point of view, taken in context with everything else that she said, in her point of view, trans women are only trans because either they're fetishists or because they've been abused.
Right.
So when she made that comment that he's holding up as some shining example of I don't know fucking what, but when he holds that example up, it's like, but that example is itself problematic.
Right. I mean,
But here's the thing that grappling ignorance. I want to get to the grappling ignorance thing, because I want to say it and I want to put it away, right? So what he said was, oh, where the hell did it go? All right, his quote was, male and female are biological terms, and there's nothing transphobic about using them accurately. That's what he said. And my response to him was, no one was disputing what male and female means. Since you seem confused about the topic, maybe don't try to sound like an authority. To which he said that, he didn't know what I was talking about him saying that, male and female. That's like bullshit. Bullshit. Don't play this game. I've been doing this online, having discussions and debates online in the great debate community long enough to be able to call bullshit when I see it.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
Well, and like I said, even if you look at the one thing he was holding up, even if you steel man that, right? Even if you ignore the problematic aspects of it, pretend that it wasn't.
Right.
It's still outweighed by every fucking else thing she's ever said. And I'm like, so no, you're cherry picking. This is like the people. This is like, I have a black friend. I found this one black guy. I picked that black sheriff from Texas who swallows everything the right wing says, and I'm ignoring all the rest of black people because it fits the narrative I want to believe.
Exactly.
And that to me is the height of intellectual dishonesty, because again, someone who's supposed to be a skeptic, to me, and I've said this several times, skepticism begins with you. If you can't apply skepticism to the things you believe, you're not a skeptic.
So, like, Josh has this, I guess you can call it a Meridian Frost has this, catchphrase. I guess you can call it a catchphrase. It's interrogate nature. It's on his. It's proudly displayed on his YouTube channel. But he doesn't do that. Because he's not interrogating anything. He is basing his belief on what trans people are or how they should be respected on a really skewed point of view. And the Oxford fucking dictionary, because dictionaries should be our fucking sources for what things are.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about that too is that so he seemed to get hung up on. So first he said, okay, so male is biological sex, or actually anatomical sex would be the better word, because we know that there's more than just XX and XY. There's a whole panoply of
Wasn't even going to go there with him because he immediately, I already knew what his response would be. Is that those cases are just so rare? Why bother bringing them up?
Right, even though
Anyway,
they exist, and
they exist, right?
But the thing about it is that but then he says, on the one hand, he says he respects people's gender identity, but then he says, but man equals male. Like, no, it can be, and most commonly,
Right.
Sure, but to say
And
that all people do that.
See, that's why I posted the Merriam-Webster's contrast, right? Because if you look up on Merriam-Webster, right, the contrast between sex and gender, it lays it out pretty well. And he said that he agrees with that. Okay, so then what's the hang-up? And his hang-up is the qualifier trans. So for whatever reason, he feels that is absolutely necessary to use, because that way you know how to interact with the person. So basically what he's saying, right, is he should act differently towards me than Peach, because Peach is a real woman and I'm make-believe.
Yeah, it's basically, it's an unavoidable consequence of what he said.
That's exactly, that apparently that seems to get lost. And then, like I said, fucking grappling ignorance is there, basically sucking his dick. I mean, if you read the comments, that's another unavoidable, observation. He's just there slurping. So fuck that shit.
And it's funny. There's so many times people will say something, and then you point out that it has to mean a certain thing, and then they say, "I didn't say that." I'm like, but you did. It's just like when we always ran into, when we were dealing with believers, when you say, okay, do non-believers go to hell? Yes. Am I a non-believer? Yes. So I'm going to hell. I didn't say that. No, it's an unavoidable consequence of what you said.
It's like, is it trans men are trans men and trans women are trans women? Okay, but are trans women women? No. But I love and respect trans women. No, you don't. No, you don't. You might think you do, but you don't. And that's why that he has bigotry that he is unaware of, that he is blind to, and he scoffed at that, which of course he did. I think anybody would. I would. But it's just like, dude, you've got all of these people, like Michael Payton, basically, of course he said it a lot better than me because, I'm a simpleton. But, Michael Payton is just like, what you're saying is like the opposite of what the World Health Organization and, all these other, medical organizations have said. And he told them, you are wrong, factually, scientifically, psychologically, you're just wrong.
Right.
And he's just like, well, I will think on that. But when I had said the same fucking thing, he's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's like a lot of people mistake what the appeal to authority fallacy is. They think, well, if you're referring to an authority, but no, but these are the authorities on that topic, on those.
On that topic.
That's not, appeal to, an appeal to authority would say, well, we're talking about, biology, and you're going to, appeal to a physicist because, oh, he's got a PhD. Like somebody was arguing with me about AI. Well, Stephen Hawking said something about AI. I don't give a fuck about Stephen Hawking. I know more about computers than Stephen Hawking ever did. I couldn't touch him on physics, right? Couldn't even scratch the surface with him on physics. but I know way fucking more about computers than Stephen Hawking ever did. So, it's like arguing, well, I don't give a fuck what Stephen Hawking said about AI. When's the last time, when did he ever write any AI or anything remotely AI like, so it's just, but yeah, I mean, look, I hope he does think on it. I hope he really does. I really do. And I guess I'd say that someone like Josh is more likely to be able to learn his way out of it. I hope he does.
He doesn't seem like he's willing to do that. I mean, he pretty much, planted his flag. I mean, even his girlfriend, Kelly, she commented to me on one of the threads, basically in Josh's defense. And a lot of what she said, I mean, I absolutely agree with. I mean, just the kind of person that Josh is. I've known him for 15 years. I got a pretty good idea.
Right.
But still, I mean, it's like, I'm looking for the quote because I don't want to get this wrong. Okay, here's the quote. For those of you who were unaware, this is a quote that Meridian Frost has held up as proof that J.K. Rowling is not transphobic. I believe the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable. Trans people need and deserve protection. I feel nothing but empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. So that's the comment that he says proves that there's no way that she can be transphobic, despite all of her transphobic comments and the fact that she actually used her hard-earned money, to help pass a bill in the UK to deny legal status to trans women.
Right. I mean, this is the thing. Donald Trump says he's not a racist, but do we believe him just because he said it? I mean, really? I mean, you could just look at his entire life, his private history of as a business owner, his history as president. So just because somebody, I can say whatever, anyone can say whatever they want, but if their actions don't match their words, to me, a skeptic would look at that and say, hey, perhaps your words are incongruent with your other words and other actions, so that maybe you weren't so sincere, or maybe when you said this a long time ago, you were sincere, but maybe you're not so sincere now. If you want to be really, really, generous to the other person, but that's it's just cherry picking. I don't want to change my mind. I want to believe this, so I'm going to latch onto the one kernel I can in order to stake out my position, and then ignore all the evidence to the contrary.
So, to start on Meridian Frost, I want to give him credit for at least being acceptant of trans people to an extent where we're dealing with people on our side of the fence with this argument. Like, if we cut the population in half and had the intolerant people on the other side of the fence, he wouldn't be on the other side of the fence. I'm talking like 0 to 10, 10 being I love trans people, 5 being I'm tolerant of trans people, 7 being I accept trans people. I think he's a 7.5 at least, and at a drag show he would stick a dollar bill in a garter belt, regardless of all of this crap that we're talking about with labels, right?
Yeah,
I think he's at least there, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about somebody who is a Trump voter. We're not talking about somebody who would even consider voting for Ron Paul or.
Well, actually, I'm gonna disagree with you there, because I recall, I think it was 2020, because Bernie was not the nominee, he said he wasn't going to vote until we had universal health care. Which I'm like, well, how are you going to do that if you don't vote? So yeah, he held his breath and stayed home. So I don't think he wouldn't vote for Trump, but I don't think he would necessarily do the right thing.
Yeah, I don't think he's voted on the federal level in the last 5 years.
Okay.
And I could be wrong, but that's my impression.
I just want to give him credit for having been your friend for 15 years. Like for this long, being in, allowing people in his presence, right? But like we're at least dealing with that level of person, not somebody who would just exclude you right away for hearing that you're trans.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, because Meridian Frost has known Raven for so long.
Yeah.
Hell, he was on the show a few weeks ago, wasn't he? Right.
Yeah.
So we were here, we had a conversation, and everything was cool. So basically, he's basically telling someone who's supposedly his friend, who she gave airtime to, I don't really respect your identity. I'll pretend I do, but I don't really think you're really who you think you are. That's what and that's the thing. And I somebody who, a friendship that's blown up over the last few months with me, somebody who basically, I started to cut off because I realized that I felt they were taking advantage of me. And then they sent me a nasty gram yesterday. And part of the nasty gram was basically effectively admitting that they disrespect me because I'm fat. So I'm like, oh, okay, so we've been friends. So you're happy for me to do all these things for you and be nice to you and help you and all that. But at deep down, you really don't respect me. So, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. To me, I don't see anything different. I see what he said to Raven, like, because he wasn't just like talking in the ether, right? He's talking to a trans woman.
So for me, the difference between like the modicum that I will give him and where we're at in this group here, I'm looking at this paragraph. First thing he says, it seems we've reached a point where believing in biological reality. Stop right there. Biological reality, right? I'm just going to say there are biological reasons for someone to want to change their gender, right?
Right.
That is a reality. And we are talking about a minority, an extreme minority anyway. So like saying, oh, well, that's like the minority doesn't hold weight here, because like we're talking about like an extreme minority in the first fucking place, right? When I go to shop for pork chops, lean pork chops, because I'm healthy here, right? Sometimes I'll see this sticker that says organic. And I fucking know what organic really means. And every goddamn thing in that aisle is organic, right? But they put those, I know what they mean by that label, right? But they're not using it right. In this case, he's not using it right. He doesn't know what, it's like saying Raven is not a biological organism.
Right.
Like that's
well, that's just
that would be like he'd consider that a straw man. But when you really look what he's saying, that Raven is existing outside of biological reality, Raven is here.
I know what you're saying, but I would never make that argument.
Biological organism, right?
Well,
but I will
agree with just the first part, right? Second one, protecting children from irreversible decisions. You know that Rush song that says, if you choose not to make a choice, you still made a choice, right?
Right.
Fucking, I have to deal with people who had to transition too late to pass. Right? And that fucks people up, and it contributes to suicide rates, right? Protecting children from irreversible decisions should also include protecting them from the parents who don't want them to transition at all and hold them until it would be painful for them to transition because they won't pass.
Well, plus the fact that no one is performing surgery on underage people.
Puberty blockers.
Right.
So they hold the decision for a while.
Right, but
puberty blockers. What he's saying. Well, let's protect kids from puberty blockers.
But yeah, but that's not an irreversible decision. That's the whole point of puberty blockers. Is it's a blocker. It doesn't stop puberty forever. And the funny thing is that no one in this country gave a fuck about puberty blockers when gymnasts have been taking them for the last 45 goddamn years. And so that's why I when I hear, and the thing is, I think I can't speak for Raven, but I'll speak for myself. The thing that's distressing me about the two things you read there is that's literally the same bullshit that literally verbatim what comes out of transphobes' mouths.
Yeah. That's the thing. He's using the language. He's using the language of transphobes and then saying, but I respect you. And it's like, the fuck you do. You don't.
The next part of his paragraph, advocating for fairness in sports. That's not what he's probably advocating for. He's advocating for the status quo in sports. Sports as they are not fair because they are not
Right.
inclusive of everyone,
Right.
including trans people. We should have sports where you could participate regardless of your gender and still be competitive, right? Sports are not fair. I can't play volleyball because they're all girls leagues, and I'm a dude. You don't see like tons of money being put into girls football either, right?
So here's the thing, like, so
sports are not fair. What he's arguing for is like the status quo of where sports are, which excludes trans people completely. How the fuck is that fair?
So, like I had said to him in the comments and in response to him, was that that if somebody is transitioning, right? If they've transitioned, right, their muscle mass and everything else is not the same as a man. These aren't men. Like, if you want trans women to play against men, how is that fair? But he seems to be under the impression that all they have to do is say, for a man to say, well, I'm a woman now, so now I can compete against women. That's just not what's happening. Once you start hormones, right, your muscle mass, your weight distribution, all that stuff starts to change. Now, there are some things that don't change. Your skeletal structure isn't going to change, right? But I'm kind of thinking, for the most part, big fucking deal. Because you know what? With weaker muscles, the heavier skeletal structure isn't an advantage, it's a disadvantage. That's number one. And number two, if biological differences that you're born with are unfair if it's trans people, but not if it's cis people, well, that is discriminatory in itself. Because I brought up the example of Michael Phelps having ankles that are double jointed, meaning that he can swim with his feet, use his feet like flippers. And anybody he's racing against doesn't have that. And I asked, should he be banned from competing because of that unfair advantage? And he said, no. Why fucking not?
The next thing he mentions is safety in prisons. And for somebody who did not vote because Bernie didn't get the nomination, I'm surprised that he would be arguing for a carceral system where it would just be, a binary set of, if you're a guy, you go here, if you're a girl, that you go here, instead of, accommodating everyone and having a special population unit for people who are in danger. Like, and he's, saying that you should be put in a prison based on genetics. I'm like, no, there should be more to the prison. We shouldn't just have these prisons where we try to put more and more people every year in them, stacking them like sardines, and then just separating them to the basics so that it's the most dangerous place in the fucking world. How's that?
In fairness, Josh has spoken out against the prison system.
Yeah, I imagine he has if he's a Bernie fan. Why is he now saying that we should throw trans people in with whatever their genetics are?
Well, here's another problem too. It's also inconsistent what he said. So he said, okay, trans women aren't women, but he also said they aren't men. So then shouldn't there be a place for trans women and a place for trans men under the auspices that he's saying he believes? So he doesn't even fucking believe that. He's full of shit. He's not consistent.
No, he's not consistent.
And he keeps pulling the language of
transphobes. Now, a lot of what he said is his logic is internally or it is inconsistent. And it's frustrating. And it's just like, dude, how could you not see this?
Well, this is the problem. I've said this before, and I'll say it many times again as long as I'm breathing. This is the biggest problem. You said about somebody on our side of the fence, Mike, and I agree. I probably give him a 6 and not a 7.5, but okay. But here's the problem. It's easy to point out to the rabid bigot, whatever they are, whether rabid transphobe, racial, ethnic, religious bigot, whatever. We all see it, and a lot of them will wave the flag. Yeah, I am that. It's a lot harder when people are not meaning to be that or not wanting to be that, but they fall for bullshit. So because then people get defensive. They don't want to accept the fact that like I'm not a sexist, but just because you may not be an active sexist, you may have latent sexist beliefs because you've been indoctrinated in it. I mentioned this when I went to the Women of Color Beyond Belief a few years ago. I said, look, as a man, a cis man, I grew up in a sexist society. I'm still living it. I was taught a lot of stuff that was sexist, even some stuff that was, sort of like positive sexism, like, women up on a pedestal, which is still objectifying women, right? So I was taught a lot of bullshit. And then at a certain point in my life, I had to realize, hey, this stuff that I've been taught is bullshit. And I had to divest myself and I had to work at it. And instead of getting defensive when somebody points it out, I have to like try to internalize and say, hey, does this person have a point? And I said, to this day, I still won't say that I don't have any latent sexism because I can only somebody else, only the people that would be affected by that are competent enough to say whether or not I am or not, right? So because it's a process. So for all I know, I probably have still some latent bullshit sexism stuffed in my stupid head. If somebody points it out, I'll try to accept it and try to learn from it.
Michael, you read through the threads. You might remember this because I might be wrong, but I think it was Richie, or I'm sorry, I don't want to be doxing people. I think it might have been, Grappling Ignorance had said that, the whole you have to be of that particular minority to be able to call out, the transphobia or racism or whatever. He said that that's bullshit. I think it was Grappling Ignorance had said it on the thread. And that just kind of like enraged me because it's bullshit.
Well, I guess I'd say this. Someone who's not that can say it is, but they're not qualified to say it isn't.
Yeah, right.
Because only the person you're hurting can tell you whether you're hurting them or not. That's what happened with Tracy, right? I mean, basically, she's going off on this, extreme body positivity thing, and I'm like, you are harming me as an obese person. Your attitudes are harmful, not just to me, but to fat people in general, but especially to me. And you're supposed to be my friend, and you don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're being harmful.
So there was a guy, I don't remember who he was. He's not part of this discussion. But he was big heavyset guy, who made a transphobic comment on a post that I saw. And so I responded to him, sir, I think you need to put down the cheeseburger and step away from the fries. And about an hour later, he responded, why on earth would I do that? And I was like, you know what? I don't know. That's a good answer. I'm thinking, I didn't say it to him. I'm thinking, you're a real piece of shit, but that was a good answer.
So that's why, like I said, I hope he sees his way through. I hope he really does. He said he's going to think on it. I hope he really does. I'm not going to hold my breath.
No, I mean, I know for a fact he's there was a number of people because I've been getting messages from a bunch of people, and they were like, yeah, unfriended, and I'm like, yeah, that's a shame, I mean, I'm not going to tell people to unfriend or to friend or whatever. You got to do what you want to do. You follow your own path or whatever, but it's still sad. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurt me to see some of his comments. It hurt me to find out this is how he feels about trans people. It's how he sees trans people. One of the things that was kind of like inconsistent was, trans women are not women. And I'm like, so basically what you're saying is trans woman is just a man in a dress. And he's like, no, I didn't say that. Yeah, you kind of fucking did. You can't have it both ways.
Not unless he qualifies it and say, well, there's this other category. But again, he says there's this other category, but then says that, you should go in a prison with a bunch of guys.
Right.
because you were born with a dick.
And it's this whole concept, this whole idea of male socialization, right? It's like, you talk about people, right, that they should be locked up with women after they've been socialized, as a man. And so what are you basically saying? That men can't be trusted? But also, trans women, there's more to transitioning than just makeup and clothing.
Mm-hmm.
There is altering of your biological reality here. I do not have testosterone pumping through my veins. I just
told
don't.
you. I looked at a picture of you from like 7 years ago, and that's the thing. So we see each other all the time, so it's harder to notice the transition. Right. But when I see a picture of you from back then and I see you now, I'm like, holy shit, that's massive changes.
So I recently, for somebody at work, I played an old video of mine, and actually it was Tiny Dinosaur. I played an old video, and her first reaction was, holy shit, that voice. She's like, your voice has changed so much. And I was like, I don't notice it. I don't notice it. But, a couple of other people in the room were like, actually, yeah, your voice has changed. You don't sound like that anymore.
Right.
And that's not something I tried to do. That's a biological thing. My voice has changed because of the hormones in my body have changed.
Yeah.
So the next sentence that Josh had after saying, I don't believe transgender women are women or transgender men are men, he says, I don't believe there's a subset of sex aside from intersex.
Right.
Right. And
that's not even true.
So what he believes is that, like, I believe that it's true that he believes that, but it's not true. This thing that he believes is not true.
Right.
So we shouldn't be having to give a biology lesson. I'm not a biologist, right? I'm a counselor. But like, this is like simple stuff for anybody who is in our community. And we probably already heard it. All of these other reasons. Like, just because the genetics didn't affect what's in between your legs doesn't mean it didn't affect some other part of the body that could make someone feel like they're the opposite gender.
Well, and that I love to point out, and again, I think because I could be wrong, but the impression I get is there's way more trans women than trans men. Like that they're not, instead you would think they would be even, but there's actually way more. So here's the thing. All of us, every single one of us in utero started out female. And that's a biological fucking reality. We all were female in utero at one point. When our buds first started appearing, we were all female. And we all, 50% of us roughly, transitioned in utero to a male body. So it makes sense to me. And this is the reason why we actually have intersex people, right? Because sometimes, the way that stuff transitions in utero goes not the way you would expect it, The
blastocyst or the embryo is showered at a very particular specific time with a certain amount of hormones, which then helps determine the sex. Exactly. And the brain develops at a different time under different circumstances, and is also showered with hormones, and that determines how your brain is going to, or at least doesn't determine it. It adds to, it's in addition to other things.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the factors that goes into how you end up perceiving yourself as far as gender.
Right.
There are biological aspects to this.
In the private chat, I just put through the obituary of my friend Joni, who died last year. She had Turner syndrome, right? She could not have children of her own because of Turner syndrome, right? She had just an X, not XX, not XY, just an X, right?
Wow.
But down between her legs, looked female, right? Because, in utero, she didn't get anything like male bits. She presented as female. She said that she was female, right? But only one X, right? And she actually is one of the oldest Turner syndrome people to have ever lived. She died at 46 years old because most of them have heart complications that they don't live past 20, right? I knew her for a long time. Like he's invalidating her for sure when he says that he doesn't believe people exist out of the binary that aren't intersex.
So,
Klinefelter syndrome exists,
right.
and it's one of those things that could give somebody an unfair advantage in the Olympics for sure, because you're going to have a lot more testosterone in those people. Um, Androgen insensitivity syndrome. That's when somebody does have an XY, but when they're a female in the womb, they never become a male because they're insensitive to androgens, right? Mm-hmm. This is a genetic disorder that exists outside of intersex because they're going to pop out as a girl, but they've got an XY, right? Like mosaics, they exist too, just like calico cats, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not even like in biology YouTube. I just like I exist in this community, and you're going to come across these things. Like after 15 years, you had to have heard of all these different things besides intersex that don't fit the binary.
The thing is what it appears as though, because it never affected him personally, he never engaged in the topic or the conversation, and really just doesn't give a shit.
Well, ever since gaining the ability to forge steel, I'd say that Josh has been presenting more masculine, but prior to that, kind of femboy presentation. Like, and I'm going to say that like that is outside of my definition of what a manly man is, because you could probably lead him around by his nipple piercings. Like that's not a traditional man, in that manly man sense of the word. But we're part of what man means here.
Josh, for a long time, was one of my favorite people in the community.
Yeah,
his style of argumentation was brilliant. I just, he was really good at getting his thoughts together and researching them and putting them out there, just laying everything out. He has a mocking quality to him. When he believes he's, basically got you on the ropes. He's got it's very, and I like it. I like it. And to have this discussion with him when what he's arguing goes against science, what he's arguing goes against my own lived experience. It's just like, dude, where did this bullshit even come from? And I wanted to real quick. I wanted to like Tiny Dinosaur here. To be anti-trans is misogynistic, actually, because it's the same thing. It's men telling this subsection of women, how they can interact with the world, what they can do with their bodies, what they're allowed to call themselves, and how they're allowed to identify. It is misogynistic. To be anti-trans is to be anti-woman. And actually, even to be homophobic is also anti-woman, because the entire idea why men tend to just be down on gay men, like to bully them, and because they say that they're sissies, that they're not masculine, and therefore they're feminine, which must be a bad thing. So yeah, homophobia, transphobia, it's all misogynistic. It's all anti-woman. It's bullshit.
And you brought up something that I love to point out about transphobes, that if somebody is, just say somebody identifies as a gay man and they're effeminate, they will bully, like you said, they'll bully that person. And they'll call that man a woman.
Right.
If at some point that person says, you know what, I am a woman, now after being told that he was a woman, now she says, "Yes, I am," and they go, "No, you're not."
No, you're not. Yeah.
And we know somebody that happened to.
Yes. Yeah.
Tattoo Skin 72.
Yep.
So for years, because
Whose whose transition is amazing, by the way.
oh yeah, yeah,
So
oh yeah, but when she went by the name of Michael, then and was identified as a gay man, was very effeminate and was bullied all the time. I saw it all the time. And then she's like, "No, you know what? I really am a woman." And but yet, but then people don't accept it. Although I think it's kind of interesting though. At least I haven't had contact with her in quite a long time, but the last time I did, she seemed to be a Trumper, and she was married to a Trumper, and it was
oh boy.
weird. That was bizarre. So I was like, well, good on you, Trump kind of guy, for looking past the bigotry your group generally has. That's good,
Well, I
but
mean, look at Blair White. I mean, let me see if I can find. Uh, will this work? I don't know. Let me see. Let me see. Where is this psycho bitch? I can't show that picture. Oh, wait, here you go. Here's a psycho bitch. So, okay. So this is Blair White. Blair White is a trans woman. Blair White is a Trumper. She is a MAGA Republican and she is anti-trans. And she says a lot of the same things that Josh has said today.
right.
And even Josh has said in the comments in the thread, that there are trans people that agree with what he says. And all I have to say is big fucking deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's cherry picking. I want to believe this, so I will look for tokens, and that's why the as much as the right wing hates trans people, they'll latch on to Blair White because again she appeals to their narrative. She basically provides them cover.
yep. I mean, and it's just like I use pictures of Blair frequently for a lot of these discussions because she's really perfect for it. Because that picture she looked kind of plastic, but in like some of the others, it's just like if you didn't know, right? If I didn't tell you that this is a trans woman, right?
Yeah, I
And
wouldn't
not
have
just any trans woman, but pre-op, she is intact. By the way, just so you know, she has publicly talked about how she would not have bottom surgery.
guessed.
Um, you know, if you didn't know, somebody didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't guess
No,
that Blair White.
the only thing I would guess is that because you look at she had her cheeks plumped up.
Oh my
But
God,
I
it's
wouldn't
so ridiculous. She looks like a sex doll.
but I wouldn't have thought that she was male bodied.
So people are like, oh my God, the freaks shouldn't be allowed in the ladies' room. And then I'll show them this picture. I'll be, well, what bathroom should this person use then? You know?
Well, I saw a great meme the other day. It's like Republicans, and there's a line of women, and there's one woman in the front. She's lifting up her dress, and it says, "We have to protect." And the guys on, one guy's on a microscope, and the other guys, "We have to protect women from perverts."
Yep. Yeah.
And this I think about something that Stephen Fry said in that debate he and Christopher Hitchens had with Ann Whitcomb and that Catholic bishop, where the right wing acts like we on the left are obsessed with sex. Like, no, you are so obsessed with other people's gender and sex and sexual preferences and all this kind of stuff. And look, if they always act like we're stealing, like everyone else is stealing something from them. Like J.K. Rowling said that, like, well, like women can't be women now. No one's stopping a cis woman from being a woman.
Exactly. But here's the thing: is they'll take something and because there are some Like, okay, so there are some things that are out there that I find ridiculous. But just because I find it ridiculous, it doesn't mean that I'm right, or that what I'm calling ridiculous is wrong. It just means that I don't think it's necessary. So, like, they changed, like, pregnant woman to a person who gives birth, right? And this is one of the things that J.K. Rowling was reacting to. Oh, they're destroying womanhood, and it's just like, no, it's just including more people,
Right.
into that group. Do I think we need a phrase that includes trans men? Not really, because pregnant person pretty much covers it.
Well, that's generally what I say, pregnant person. In general, I don't like when we torture language just by turning things into phrases, right? But yeah,
Right.
pregnant person covers everything.
Right, and I agree with that. I mean, I hear things all the time, and I understand that it's an attempt to be inclusive. But at what point are you just like jumping through hoops for like the most minor gain? It just doesn't seem worth it to me. And it
Well,
turns off people who aren't who don't have the patience to educate themselves.
well, and it's why even though I've given up on it because I know it's not going to change, but I despise the term person of color because linguistically, there's absolutely no difference between that and colored person.
Right.
And again, what it is because people are trying to avoid saying minority because minority seems to have a bad. Like, well, I'm a minority, but that's okay. Or actually, that's why I kind of like when more recently people have said like marginalized people because it covers everybody, whatever the reason you're marginalized.
I like marginalized people myself. Yeah,
it gets
and I do. I like a lot of marginalized people.
yeah, exactly. Person who bleeds. Yeah, that's also that reminds me of the free bleeders. Like, God, look, I get that so much of stuff that women have to deal with are like artifices invented by men and women have to deal with, and that sucks. But like the idea that men are turned off by menstrual blood because it's women and blah blah, so that I'm gonna bleed into my clothes, and I'm like, okay, if you want to, but it's dirt, it's unhygienic and it's messy. And you're not like that's like you're not winning anything by that, right? Like it's like a stance for no reason. Um, well, that's a good point, Peach. But it's like, look, if you want to bleed on your clothes or your sheets, be my guest. I don't care. I'm revolved by all blood. I think like when people like have a cut in their finger and they stick it in their mouth to suck on, that turns my stomach. So it has nothing to do with being turned off by women or menstruation or like that. I think blood is nasty. I don't like blood. So it's not an anti-woman thing, it's an anti-blood thing. I'm an anti-vampire, I guess, the only reason why I keep my own blood is just the I have no choice. It's either that or be dead. So at least at the moment, I'm sticking with blood.
So the thumbnail for this show is was it Curly? And no, was it Curly? I don't know. It's one of the Three Stooges. I'm drawing a blank as to which one. And what's his face? Tucker Carlson. And I chose Tucker Carlson for the thumbnail for a reason. And that's a lot of the stuff that Josh had said is the kinds of stuff that Tucker Carlson has said. And what really bothers me about that is it's not a big jump from one thing that Tucker Carlson says to something else that Tucker Carlson has said. And that one thing in particular is that the American public needs to arm themselves against the trans threat. So he has advocated killing me. And my friend, is there on Facebook echoing some of the same things that this person says. That bothers me.
Well, where I placed Meridian Frost on this scale, I don't think that he would get past the the level of tolerance of a 5 and go to like hatred or anything below that.
No,
But
I
being
don't either.
being where we place them is not a 10. There it is closer to the hatred than
Right.
a lot of the people that we
Right.
talk to.
What really bothered me, I think more than anything else, what really, really bothered me, um, is he said that he is not going to discuss the topic anymore. He has said his piece and he will not learn. No, no, thank you. He is done. He resisted for years, wading into this discussion. Now he has, and he's going to take no knowledge away from it. He has dismissed almost everyone who has tried to have any logical, reasonable discussion, and he has thanked the people who have decided to kiss his ass. So, yeah, that's where Mr. Frost sits on this.
You know, I mean, like I said before, you know, it's. I don't know why people think it's a sign of strength of sticking to a position that is not well supported. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, you know, well, actually, you know, think about the trans argument, right? So on, I forget which iteration of the Breakfast Club, but one of them,
Okay.
and the topic was basically there was somebody, a student in a class, and I guess the teacher had a habit of saying, you know, ladies and gentlemen, and the student, you know, said that, you know, pointed out that that's not as inclusive as it could be, but they didn't do it maybe in the best way. They were very hostile about it, and so that became the topic for the week. And so when I did my video, somebody in the comments said, "Well, you're not a trans ally," and I was like, "Well, yeah, you can't tell me I'm not a trans ally." And then after thinking about it years later, I'm like, "No, they were totally right. That was an idiot." You know, it's like because I wasn't willing to consider that, you know, they had a point, and then but then as I tried to learn to be more like an actual skeptic and realize, hey, it's okay to admit you were wrong. That's actually a sign of strength and growth rather than just sticking in a position because, you know, you don't want to, you know, la la la, la I'm a good person, la la la, I'm a good guy.
So
It's curly, right? Thank you. Um, so the ladies and gentlemen thing, I think ladies and gentlemen is fine.
Right.
Um, I don't see a need. Like there are things that are just there are things that we say as a culture that are ingrained in our culture because it goes back X number of years. There is nothing about that is meant to be exclusionary. It is meant to include everyone, even if it may not seem like it does. And I really don't find it to be a harmful thing. But I do know that there are people who have, you know, fought against it. And okay, good for them. I don't think it is a constructive use of energy.
I'm with you on that. Um, but you know, the thing is, I guess the thing was that they were, you know, I still learned something in the exchange, right?
Right.
I still
Oh, I
real
get it. Yeah, I get it. And you know, as far as like Josh and how that applies here, I hope he does learn something from the exchange, and that he reads some of the things that were put forward to him. I don't know. I don't know.
I would hope that some reconciliation could happen here because I really feel like he's closer to our side than Tucker Carlson. You know,
sure.
I feel like it's a long trek from between him and Tucker Carlson, but at the same time, what he has chosen to believe is really an attack on Raven, like Raven's existence, and it sucks.
Well, that's the thing, because again, it was not only is Raven a friend, longtime friend of his, but this started on Raven's wall, right? So
Peaches
if not, was it
on
on Peaches?
peaches.
Okay, okay, but still, you know, so you know, you're a significant other, and I'm like, you know, sometimes sometimes you might disagree with somebody, but sometimes it's good to just shut the fuck up. You know, really. Seriously. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, I'm, you know, I am very, because I'm proprietary about my wall, right? So when I'm on somebody else's wall, I try to pull it back. And if I go too far, if somebody calls me out on it, I will delete comments, I'll edit, I'll do whatever, because that's their wall, that's their space.
You had a back and forth, a very short one with my mom. And I'm like, Joe, that's my mom.
Yep.
So
And Joe was just like, no, but if she's wrong, she's wrong. And I'm like, I agree with that, but that's my mom.
Yep. So I backed off.
when I say that I would hope that there could be some reconciliation on this, I'm still in like the joking but serious like mood here, and I say like the first thing we need to do is we need to order Joe a balanced, really good chopping knife made out of Damascus steel, right? Like some really good stuff, but we want it to be stamped with the words trans women are women, right? Because the customer is always right, right? And then we could just present the knife as, you know, as made by this master knife maker that Meridian Frost is, and say, look, this was made by Josh. Customer's always right, and Josh made these words that the customer ordered, so therefore this is right. Trans women are like, that's all we got to do. How much is the knife? I know it's kind of pricey because this is a really good knife. Damascus.
Right. I got some expensive knife. I got a set of Shun there.
But this is all we got to do is order the knife, right? The way that we want it.
And quite frankly, you know, and I'll pay for good chef knives. I've done it before.
Yes.
Because like my set, I've got like
free advertising for some really good knife making for Josh here, right? I don't know how many other different phrases we could make Josh stamp on the side of knives. You know, whatever floats your boat, people. You know, it's out there. You could make somebody who is an atheist write some really not atheist things on a knife that you order. I don't think that Josh would ever refuse somebody like a wedding cake maker refusing a gay couple. Josh wouldn't do that. Josh is a lot more inclusive of the community and would make you what you want. So whatever it is that you want, go order it from Josh's Knives.
While I believe that that's true, and that Josh is, you know, inclusive and everything else, I think what today's events have really pointed out is you don't know what somebody might be thinking inside. And so for me to believe that Josh was inclusive, and that Josh understood trans and that he was, you know, accepting and, you know, gave a shit, right? To read a lot of what he said today tells me that I was wrong. I was wrong about that when it comes to Josh. Well, what else am I wrong about?
Also, I'll just say, I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't think people could change. And sometimes the changes that they make are not the ones that you would like to see in them. And as people get older, oftentimes they get more conservative.
Yes.
And so this could be one of those steps in someone's progression through life.
Yes, it's actually something that crossed my mind through this, that, you know, that he is getting older.
Maybe the Josh you did know, but this is just someone who's evolving as a person.
Well,
Right.
especially, I'll tell you, you know, I watch Forge and Fire a lot. So Suzanne and I both love the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the propensity of people in that community are conservative by probably 75 to 25, maybe even a little bit more. And there's definitely an impact that, you know, whatever group we're in, people love to act like they're individualists, but most people are conformists. And people will tend to start to conform with the group that they are hanging around in. Either that, or what ends up happening is if they don't, then friction starts, and eventually they either get cast out of the group or they leave the group on their own.
Couple of stories. I have a couple of stories. One is the friend that I was referring to earlier in the show about the friendship test, who I used to work with, no longer work with. Her peer group is right wingers and Trumpers. She tends to come across as a bit of a right winger. She is not somebody that I ever expected that I would ever be friends with. She's the type of person that I just didn't think I would click with, and yet at work we became very close. Small Dino can attest to that. This woman and I became really close at work, and I think I am the only trans person that she knows. I think people suck. I think I'm the only trans person she knows, and some comments that she had made early in the year led me to believe that she might have been a Trump voter. Turns out she's actually not an American citizen, so she didn't vote. But I think if she could vote, she might have voted for Trump. And like I said, her peer group is very much all Trumpers.
You know,
I got a feeling that not being with her a lot anymore because we're not working together, and she's spending more time with her peer group, that she may actually start drifting even further to the right. So, and that's why I wonder about our friendship and why it's being put to the test now.
Yeah, no, I think it happens. I run into, and it's funny because I remember Bo, the Fifth Column, did a video saying that people don't get more conservative, just that as society gets more liberal, people kind of stay where they are, and then people move past. And there's a certain truth to that. But I've definitely seen, like, people that I went to high school with. Yeah, yes, I've gotten more liberal, but they've definitely gotten more conservative. You know, people that were definitely, like, you know, weed smoking, like, you know, live and let live kind of guys that are like flat out like hostile, angry Trumpers, racists. And one friend, my friend Matt, he was a really good guy. I loved him, and we didn't hang out a lot in school, but, you know, mostly just at school. But I ran into him a few, you know, in recent years, and it's just like there's so much vitriol. And I called him on it because I was like, "Well, is that what you think of me, Matt?" You know, and I'm like, and tried to like slough it off. I'm like, "No, man, fucking think about what you're saying." And I see it all the time. There's lots of it.
I went to school with some girls that were sucking dick in the back of cars who today are now posting Bible verses all over Facebook.
Right.
Like, bitch, what?
Oh, a lot of that.
Come on.
Well, you
We
know,
all know that's not what you really think.
well, to quote a formerly funny rapist, you know, this is an old person who's trying to get into heaven now. It's a Cosby line.
This is a strange thing about that Forged in Fire show. My stepmother passed away last year as well, and when she died, she eventually, like, the last thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back was COVID. But in the last 3 weeks of her life, she was watching Forged in Fire with her grandsons, who really liked the show too, and she was really into it. I'm telling you, this woman had dementia because she had a lung transplant that was failing, and it was like choking her of oxygen, right? But she could not get enough of that show. And I'm like, man, we're spending the last 3 weeks of your life watching. Like, I hope that, like, when I go, it's not Gilligan's Island. Like, it's something really good, like better than Breaking Bad, good on TV that I'm watching. But my stepmother, before she passed, I did see her watching Josh's episode and everything after that. You know, it will cut, it will kill. Like, she loved that guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, that's what we want. We want to hear that it will kill.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is if you watch old episodes, he didn't say it that way. He said kill pretty normally, but over time, because I think people in the audience, you know, the viewers started exaggerating it, so he started going, you know, leaning into it, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, started
So let's
becoming
change the subject. Let's change the subject.
Before we do,
I want to. Okay.
I know that Raven has raised a fuck ton of money for the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, right?
Yes.
Still on this like goofy but maybe serious topic. What if Raven or someone like Raven raised a fuck ton of money for a gene therapy vaccine that changed trans women's chromosomes to XX by adding a little to the Y, right? Such that if you did a genetic test on these people, they would have XX. Then what? Because 100 years ago, this was like Schrodinger's box. You couldn't tell if somebody had a certain genetics or not. We didn't know about genes, right? Now all of a sudden that we have like this technology to be able to tell someone's genes, you want to like parse it by that. If somebody had a sex change surgery 100 years ago and it was a good one, you wouldn't be able to tell, and you would have had to just accept, right? What if we put it back in the box? What if we had this gene therapy, right? What if we start the nonprofit that raises funds to do the research on this right the fuck now? Because we do have a really good, fundraiser for initiatives like this, right? Then what? If you don't, and what I'm saying here is, Josh does not have a home fucking DNA test kit to test everyone he's seeing. They actually are still in Schrodinger's box as to whether or not they have one gene or the other.
When he mentions chromosomes in the comments, when he mentions chromosomes, my reaction, I didn't say it in the chat, but I said it here at home. I said, how the fuck do you know what anybody's chromosomes are? You don't know. He don't know if he is, XY or not. He doesn't know. He just assumes he is because he's a guy. But these things, it's not set in stone.
Well, the other thing that's kind of funny too, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, one pair of sex chromosomes. So there's so much more to a person than just that,
And the expression is on other chromosomes besides that.
And the other thing too, I was thinking of Michael as you were talking. What about? I want to know what these fuckers think about chimera people.
Yeah.
Well, basically, for anyone who doesn't know in the audience, is where they were people that would be fraternal twins, but one blastocyst absorbs the other one, and a person has the DNA of both people in them, but only one person is born, and that's run into very weird things where sometimes they've done a DNA test on somebody, and depending on where you took the DNA sample from, you get different results.
That would be a mosaic.
So if people are defining man by XY, I have bad news for them. There's a thing called vanishing Y. Eventually, there'll be no more Y chromosome, but there will still be men.
Mm-hmm.
Because it isn't the Y that makes a man a man. There's so much more to it. It is so much more involved. Chromosomes as an argument is absolute bullshit. Anybody who does any research in genetics will tell you that it's bullshit. And the only people who don't know what they're talking about or have an agenda use chromosomes as an argument.
Yeah. Well, it's just like all these fucking same people, same group of people that they all want to call themselves alpha males, don't know what it means, don't know it's not really a thing, and that if it were a thing, it's not what they think it means. Like I've seen, I don't know how many times I've seen, these self-labeled alpha men talking about how they can't get women and that the betas are like tricking women by being nice to them and all this, and I'm like, under the auspices where alpha was a thing, that would mean that the guys you're calling betas are the alphas. If we're getting the women and you're not, that's all that ever fucking.
Yeah, right. And an alpha wouldn't have to try to trick a woman in order to get his dick wet. So, So okay, I wanted to I haven't talked about this on the stream tonight. And I'm going to make this out to be a bigger thing than it really is because I do get a kick out of it. I have recently earned a certificate from Harvard University.
The certificate?
I'm sorry?
The certificate,
A certificate.
the one that is in the news right now.
I have a certificate from Harvard in U.S. government.
I thought that was wonderful that they made that available. You know, to
I'm working on another certificate.
yeah.
I'm working on a certificate from UC Berkeley, and the course is Writing for Social Justice. So
That's a good one.
I am planning on in the fall taking courses in community college here in my home county. I'm planning on taking digital journalism as a certificate course, but it's like a full, 15 credits. Yeah, so
I heard that as a result of these courses being offered to people, on a wider scale, um, that people who are in MAGA are now going to be boycotting Harvard. And,
oh boy,
and so
oh
I have decided, like, just the same, I'm going to be pulling myself out of the NFL draft.
I think that's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny how when people they just prove that they're everything you say they are.
Mhm.
I saw a thing earlier where apparently the Trump administration is talking about pulling all the visas for all Chinese college students in the U.S. And I'm like, and they're like, God, and then of course all the Trumpers are like, oh, America first. I'm like, that's not what's keeping you out of fucking Harvard or any college. It's like, well, let the Americans have it. Like, well, why can't the American students compete? Why do they suck so fucking much that they can't compete with Chinese students? So if you have a problem with the fact that the Chinese students are getting accepted over white, naming white, then maybe you white fuckers are stupid. maybe. So it's just like, but so why don't you do something about the American education system instead of letting your fucking grand poobah destroy it? Maybe getting rid of the Department of Education is not a good idea if American students can't compete with Chinese students.
I see it as more than just this moment. When they removed degree requirements from federal jobs, all that is saying, those universities, they teach things that we don't believe, so we want to be able to have the jobs without going to the universities.
Right.
We want to be able to stay uneducated but still have the good jobs.
Yeah. Right. Basically, it's just entitlement, right? I'm entitled to this job even if I don't qualify for it, which is funny because they think DEI is about giving unqualified people jobs.
So so there's that. So like I said, I'm working on a writing for social justice from UC Berkeley. I'm going to start looking for courses from Columbia. I'm gonna see if I can find one for Princeton also. I want to get as many certificates as I can under my belt from as many different institutions as possible. And I'm going to try to choose things that I am actually interested in, like such as U.S. government, and also things that would be complementary to a journalism certificate. So I was looking at the course study for the certificate for journalism, and there's website design is part of it. There's a whole, so I mean, by the time I am done with it, I may actually have my own version of the Young Turks. So I'll call it the old bird. I don't know.
Yeah.
That sweater that you're wearing right there, it says class of what year?
This is from my high school.
Uh-huh.
This is where I work now. And it's also the school I graduated from.
Cool.
And the class of '89. I actually wore this. I'm still in my work clothes. This is what I wore to work. But I get a kick out of wearing this shirt to work because I walk around, and all these, seniors right now with their class of 2025 stuff, and I'm like, class of 1989.
That's cool.
Yeah, but it was kind of like your parents weren't even out of school yet.
Yeah, nothing. Not well. I don't have anything left from back then, but none of it would fit now anyway. Working on it.
It's good. No.
Yeah. One thing that was good is like in basically after Flash died, obviously I was not really a good place. So I put on. I weighed myself, and I was expecting that I was going to be like 10 pounds up, 3 pounds only. So that's not bad considering I basically
You scared me.
I was basically
eating a different class.
Eating not great stuff for a couple of weeks, but yet I only gained 3 pounds, so that's good. Now I'm back at it. It's Peach. Well, it's mostly Peach.
It's mostly Peach.
There's the rest of her.
My Peach. Princess Peach.
It is.
Don't call me that.
Queen Peach.
Royalty here.
Well, I don't know.
Are you the queen?
I do have a crown.
Yeah.
So. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this because any particular person happens to be present in the chat, but you know what I really want? I want Mickey ears with a crown. Just saying.
Okay.
Is somebody who lives close to a Disney place in the chat?
Nope.
Okay.
She just
Tiny
if you go to her channel though, she's been there.
She has plans. It's something we've been talking about a good chunk of the year because she makes Mickey ears, and they're really nice. It's nothing like you buy at Disney. They're really nice. And I was I want Mickey ears, but I want with a crown. So
cool. A travel agency. Like I went to, and I bet you're a good one because I went to a travel agency a few years ago because I used travel agencies way back and they were great. And I actually, a friend of mine, his fiance of the time, now wife, was a travel agent, and she would go to all these places. She got all these trips to different resorts, and then she would like sell packages and stuff, and it was awesome. And then Suzanne and I went to a travel agent about 7 years ago, and the woman was like looking shit up on the internet. I'm like, well, I can do that, because like in the past, the travel agencies had access to stuff you couldn't find elsewhere, which was awesome. And I'm like, well, you're just going to go on the web. I just go home and not pay you any money. So I bet you that Small does a great job as a travel agent. Because that's actually when I was, no, mine just a long time ago, I went to Hawaii. It would have been the fall of '93. Hotel and airfare, hotel for a week and air like 8 days, 7 nights, and it was like $900, which is nothing. And even in today's dollars, it'd only be about twice that. And that's pretty amazing. And what was cool is when you got to Hawaii, because guess what it was? It was the place here in New Jersey had a deal with a place in Hawaii, and what they did was all venues in Hawaii have 2 rates. They have the visitor rate and the local rate, so that local people can actually afford to do stuff. So the local travel agency can get the local price. So what they do is they mark that up. They still make a profit. You still save a ton of money. So that was really cool. So that was great. And I actually ran into a college friend on the trip on his honeymoon.
I just had to get a room in Pasadena for the end of August. and for a week it's $2,500.
Ow.
Yeah, and what happened in January for that class that went, there were fires in California around Hollywood, right? And I'm just seeing this new fire season, creeping up on us, and how Trump has fired all the firemen that would have put out the fires. And I'm like, I just spent $2,500 to breathe smoke for a week.
Lovely.
You can see it happening. It's like a car crash in slow motion.
You know where it's crazy is Seattle. I had to go. I went there like 2 or 3 times last year, and I went to I went to a hotel that I had been at once before, and it originally was like 200 something a night, which is still way too expensive. And then the second time I went out, because Beyonce was in town and there was 2 other big shows going on in town, so there was a lot of travel. It was over $500 a night, and I'm like, I could stay in Manhattan for like a really nice place for that. And then the place I was doing the work for, King County, they didn't want to pay it, and I'm like, here was all the prices, and I would have had to been out like an hour, over an hour drive away, and my hourly rate drive with the extra driving either way was going to overcome the difference in price. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it was going to be like an hour and a half drive. Like, fuck you, I'm not driving an hour and a half. I'll go home and get somebody else to do the job. And of course, there's nobody else that could have done the job, so they were kind of stuck. Yeah. Yeah, Hawaii is very expensive.
I'm triggered by Bob's last name.
So Hawaii doesn't exist.
Hawaii doesn't exist?
I am agnostic when it comes to Hawaii. I mean,
Okay.
I've been there. I've been there.
You just don't believe it. Well, it's like flat earthers don't believe space exists. Of all the conspiracy people, they are easily the dumbest. Because every other conspiracy, even though you know that they're not real, you could understand the motivation as to why the conspirators would want to do the thing that they're talking about.
It's really convoluted, twisting, turning connections to something that is true, right? Connections to fact. But the flat earth, there's no connections to anything fact.
Well, that's the thing. Like, okay, like the Kennedy assassination, you can understand why that could have been a much bigger conspiracy, right? Any of those things, pretty much almost all of them, like 9/11, like I get it. Like it did, I looked into it. The evidence wasn't there to support it, but I understood why somebody would potentially, use that as a false flag, right? But like, what's in it? And one guy actually said to me, "Oh, well, the globe makers." I'm like, yeah, but they would just make fucking discs maps, you fucking moron. It's not, what I mean? They just sell something else. They don't give a fuck. They're making money.
RFK recently was asked a question about chemtrails, and he answered as if it's real.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing about chemtrails. Chemtrails are bullshit because first off, it would be an incredibly, like inefficient way to spread. If you really wanted to spray the populace with chemicals, you put it in the water system, or you put it in gasoline at the ground. Putting it in the air where stuff drifts and you have no control over where it lands would be an incredibly, inefficient way to do it. So, okay, I forgot about the lizard people. Okay, fair enough. But the thing is that chemtrail, but the thing is, what I always laugh about is they're like, water vapor can't stay up in the sky that long as clouds go by. I'm like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, as clouds, right. But so let me get this straight. Okay, so flat Earth is bullshit. Chemtrails is bullshit. Hawaii is bullshit. But the lizard people are real.
Well, the funny thing about the lizard people, it's literally the fucking like the plot of V. So it's like people did series V and thought it was a documentary. well, especially with anytime there's like any of this alien stuff, like there's some secret aliens, if there are these people that these creatures, beings, whatever, that had this great technology that was way in advance of ours, they would just do to us what we did to the people who are not technologically advanced on this planet, right?
Exactly.
They
That's
would,
something that Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about that all the time.
right,
And it's just like, why would we assume that they would be any different?
right.
Not for nothing, but in both iterations of V, the classic and the remake, Diana, the leader of the lizard people, female. I don't care about the genetics here. Like that, both of them. Like either pick, take your pick. That is female. That's a woman. I'm
But
getting with
again,
that other person.
uh,
It's and quite frankly, at this point, humans have fucked things up so badly. Okay, I welcome our lizard overlords. You can't do any worse. Because again, if they were here because they wanted to eat us or whatever, we would already be in farms, in people farms, and they would they wouldn't be hiding and all that. They would just round us up and slaughter us or raise us like cattle, right? Because if they had that kind of technology where they could just destroy our weapons, why go through why be surreptitious for centuries or whatever?
okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I do apologize. I am laughing because somebody shared a fake Donald Trump tweet. I love these.
What did it say?
Stop calling me names. I will not tolerate being called taco, old yam tits, orange shit gibbon, man baby, tiny hands, diaper don, mushroom dick, toupee fuck chub, open skin, diaper don again, um, drifter in chief, Don the Con, Don Old, the Lion King, rug wearing thunder, party seven, the orange Hitler, or that orange fuck. Don't make me throw ketchup at the wall because I will.
Oh god. Did you ever see there was a video of like world leaders that have had to sit next to Trump and all of them like universally just like kind of like recoiling and just kind of like trying to get air. My favorite was like
Shit himself.
the Japanese prime minister because he was just like he's talking to him, then he's like turns around and he's like oh like oh my god I can't breathe.
Yeah, he shit himself.
Yeah. Oh god.
So with Bob saying that Elon Musk is a lizard person, um, that the overlords are here and billionaires are the overlords and they're all lizard people.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I'm questioning the second half of that.
I don't think the lizard people would have them.
I don't know if he's a lizard person.
Just plain old lizard. Oh god. And what pisses me off is how he uses, the excuse of this undiagnosed. Oh, I'm autistic. You don't fucking know that. Go see a doctor.
Actually, us counselors have pinpointed the exact place on the spectrum of autism that he falls.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
we
enough.
call it Auschwitzism.
And here's the thing, like with RFK, basically with the ridiculous shit he said about autistic people, evil shit. I'm like, I've had reason to think that I might be on the spectrum somewhere. I'm not going to find out while these fuckers are in office. So maybe I should table that until it's safer.
Well, given that he's wanting to make lists, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that never ends well. And I always heard the excuses like, "Oh, well, they're just doing research." I'm like, that's not how fucking clinical trials work. You don't make lists of people and have
Well, I
this.
mean, the right wing has been like infatuated with the idea of lists for a long time. I mean, do you remember there was way back, there was some Southern preacher who was saying that they should compile a list, that the government should compile a list of atheists. And it was said at a gathering that Ted Cruz spoke at. And it was just like, yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Raven, you made the list.
I know. I'm on a couple of different lists.
You know, I didn't make the first iteration of the list. You did. I was in like the subsequent roll-ups, when it got expanded.
What list is that?
Oh, there was a list of YouTube atheists that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like a hit list.
I did see that. Actually, I was on it.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised because I mean my channel never got really big, so I was surprised that I at my peak I just barely made 2,000 subscribers.
Well, in fairness, pre-transition, I was an asshole. So now here we are post-transition, and I am not an asshole anymore. Now I'm a bitch.
No fair. I've expunged that word from my vocabulary.
Have you?
Because there's many women friends of mine who basically said if you use that word at any woman, that therefore that's what you think about all women. And I'm just like, you know what? It's just better to just fucking
get rid of it.
Just get rid of it.
I think Donald Trump does have a mental list of groups of people he wants to screw over. Someone tell Kazum he's on that list, maybe further down based on the list of atheists.
Oh well, just in general, people that he would do up. How many times did I say directly to Kazum's face? You'll be up against the wall with the rest of us.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what gets me. Well, it's really funny now. The Cuban community is going fucking apoplectic because apparently the Trump administration wants to revoke protected status for Haitians, Cubans, and one other group that basically people have got here however they got here, and then they said, well, you're part of this group, so we're going to give you protected status. He's revoking that. Of course, probably, all the Cubans in fucking Florida, voted for him, and that's why he won Florida so handily, because the Cuban vote came out and voted for him. So I'm like, fuck you, assholes. You got what you voted for. Fuck you. You thought it wasn't going to affect you. And that's why, like, people are like, oh, well, we got to learn to, make amends. No, bullshit. They have to make amends. I didn't hurt them. They're hurting the rest of us.
And the leopards are eating faces tonight.
The leopards are feasting heartily. And so, do I want bad things to happen to people? No, but if they do happen, I prefer that it happens to the people who voted for it. I think that's reasonable, right?
I agree.
And that's something I remind every time I see Europeans kind of slagging off Americans as a group. I'm like, hey, the biggest group of people in America were the 39% that didn't vote for anybody. So we're fucking stupid, but we're not all stupid. But we didn't all vote for Trump. He didn't get a majority, even of the people who showed up, and he certainly didn't get a majority of all eligible voters. He got 33%, and he only beat her by 1.5%. Unfortunately, the way the Electoral College works, it exaggerates the separation. But yeah, I'm really waiting though for when it blows back in Kazum's face, and it's gonna sound really fucking mean. I hope it does. I really fucking hope it does. Fuck that guy. Because when he was in Pennsylvania and he was getting stalked by that guy that was coming out to his trailer and menacing him, and he was in fear for his life, I gave that fucker over $1,000 so he could move back to the West Coast. And then the way he treated me and Raven, fuck him. I hope all the bad, he decided to cast his lot with those fuckers, so you can fucking take it and you can eat it, motherfucker. Because it wasn't people on our side of the fence that were outside your fucking trailer menacing you and threatening your life.
Yeah.
That's why every time Bill Maher talks about fucking being canceled, I'm like, dude, it wasn't left wingers who got you literally canceled off of ABC. Only time he actually was really canceled
Yep.
was right because he pissed off the right wingers because he said it wasn't the most heroic thing to be lobbing missiles at somebody from 1,000 miles away.
And
One thing too, I actually went to Bob's channel. I'm glad I did because I can't remember the guy's last name now, but Bob that used to be on our side who became a Trumper and he was the pederast friend.
Yeah, that was Bob Wallace.
Okay. Yeah, because when you just see the little thumbnail, I'm like,
No, Bob Wallace actually. He may have hair in different places and less teeth. Yeah, that's not him.
oh, Small likes likes me ranting. Cool.
is that what I was wondering what she was talking about? Okay, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
Joe can pop off.
I actually did recently have a discussion with Kazoom in comments, and it was similar to the one with Meridian Frost, and I told Kazoom that wouldn't it be like the same if I said that you're not a real man because you're not attracted to women, thus you don't complete the dichotomy for reproduction, and so gay men aren't real men. That would be really weird for me to make that argument. And so making the argument that trans women aren't biological women, which is
Josh, on a more recent comment, Josh actually had gone into the, and that's what I was just reading a little while ago, had gone into the biologically dimorphic nature of our species. And it's just like, we're not having a biology discussion here. This is about social constructs. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
But his insistence on staying with biology is really the problematic thing. If you're only going to use these words that are social constructs and only use them as they refer to biology, and that's all you will acknowledge, then you're the problem.
I'm going to bet right now, I would put money on this, that in the warehouse or workspace, the workshop of Meridian Frost, there are blades of various sizes that are referred to with female pronouns.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they are just pieces of steel that are, ornately fashioned, but they have been assigned female pronouns. And there may have been in Josh's past a car or two that had a gender.
Oh,
there's no consistency in anything they say. Well, this is what every time when I don't engage Trumpers very often because they're it's pointless. But when in the rare instances that I do, I ask them, what do you think you're winning? Well, you personally, not the country, not whatever. What are you getting out of this? Because you think you'd be very happy about all this. Tell me something that isn't just I hate people X, whether it's a race thing or a nationality citizenship thing, whether it's a gender, anatomical sex, or whatever. Tell me what you get, because I'm like, if bad things happen to trans people, I don't win anything. Last I checked, I gained nothing.
What I want out of a candidate, this is really weird. I want hateful people like the Trumpers, when they all lose their jobs to AI, I want them to have universal health care that isn't connected to whether or not they have a job. And if they get put on Medicaid, I don't want them to have to prove that they worked 80 hours in that month to have to be able to qualify for their Medicaid, like they're trying to put forth right now. That was in the big beautiful budget. I'm like, that's terrible. I don't want that. I want even the people that I hate, and I will say that there's some of them that I really, really hate. I want everyone to just have some health care, and dignity that comes with that.
Right. Yeah, I always say I don't hate any. Well, I won't say I don't hate anybody. There's very few people I hate, but the people that I strongly dislike, I want them to be better than they were, to be better, just like I'm trying to be better than I was.
There are people who I know can understand everything we've said here in this show, and their mindset is such. Now, how can I adapt my conservative strategy to do backflips around this new fact?
Yeah.
And when I see it, like over and over again on the same person's channel, I do begin to hate, because I'm like, you know what? I know you know the truth.
Yeah.
So Joe, not how you just said a couple minutes ago that that you're better than like you used to be. You're better than what you were, and that you're going to try to get even better. I wish I could relate, because I just can't get any better.
And the thing
This
is
is peak performance here.
no, I got a long way to go still, and I am often reminded when I forget it. Something will hit me in the face to remind me that you're not there yet, bud.
What's wild is you keep disappearing.
Oh, really? So this is the one thing that I tried to explain to an anti-woke person recently. I'm like, somebody who was like, they're anti-woke, but they weren't being a raving lunatic. So I'm like, all right, I'll try to talk to them. And I said, woke isn't a destination. Woke is a process, right? That's why the original expression was stay woke, or get, sorry, it was get woke. So in other words, and the thing is, what's gonna be woke tomorrow is gonna be different today. Actually, Patton Oswalt had a good riff on this. He said, like, what doesn't age well? Woke. And at first you think he's going to be anti-woke, and he's like, no. He says I consider myself to be woke, but what I consider going to be woke today, 20 years from now, people are going to be looking at me like I'm the old guy, like who I'll seem intolerant to people 20 years from now because I won't be where they are. And I'm like, yeah, that's just it. So it's something you have to do. It's like skepticism, right? You ever notice that all the channels where they put skeptic in their name are skeptical only about religion and nothing else, and most of them are fucking bigots.
I have a message for you.
It's a correlation. It's a strong correlation. Yeah, there are some that are good, but like most, yeah.
Especially if someone's like, they try to put a fence around skepticism, like a skeptic fence.
That guy, that motherfucker, I swear. So, okay, I have a message for you guys. ZZZ Giant Awake says hello.
Oh, yay! Cool.
So,
I like that he exists still in the world and that we know it.
Yeah.
He's actually apparently right now currently playing poker tournaments in Vegas.
Cool.
Which is like, whoa, okay.
Because I don't want to be a plagiarist. I have to acknowledge that I stole that joke from Chris Mowdy. I love when he tells that joke.
Well, I like the joke that you're telling, and as kind of an accelerationist, like becoming like a really far leftist here, like I realize that in my generation, I can be like totally loving towards Raven as a trans person, but when my niece shows up with her date, which is like a floating drone with a AI in it called Glebnar, and she wants me to treat that fucking AI drone as a fucking real person, fuck that. I am going to become boomer tarded because I'm not going to have my fucking niece dating a fucking drone fucking AI robot that fucking projects itself on the wall and then says, "No, I'm a woman." Fuck! Like, no, you're gonna be like, you're gonna find a real woman and be a real lesbian, not a fucking
Identify as an
not date
intellect.
a fucking AI,
Oh,
right?
So, go ahead, Joe.
Well, that was another argument I had with Tracy Harris about AI, because when things first started breaking, people were like, "Oh, I think the AI has achieved sentience," and I'm like, "No, it bloody well hasn't." And Tracy was like, "But how do you know?" I'm like, "Because I fucking know how computers work, for one, and I know that like the current computer chips pale in comparison to the complexity of the human brain." So just from a mechanical perspective, I'm like, you're looking also, large language models aren't really AI. What they are is they're pattern recognizing units to basically just say, okay, it gathers a bunch of data, it notices that certain words and certain phrases go together, and it regurgitates what it's learned, quote unquote learned. And that's why when they put a chatbot onto like Twitter for a day, it turned into a racist within hours, because that's what was being fed to it. Didn't fucking know anything. It doesn't know what a black person is, or a trans person, or anything, or it's just. And in fact, the chat doesn't even look at words. It actually takes those words are turned into numbers, and all it's doing is doing like a mathematical analysis. So I'm like, and it was very difficult, because I was like, I have been doing automation for 35 fucking years, and you struggle with computers, and so maybe I know something about it more than you do. And
Watching people have conversations with AI conversationally with like Sesame or ChatGPT with the voice enabled, the answers that they get often hedge as to, is it real or is it not? Like Jonathan Frakes at the end of the Alien Autopsy.
oh, right.
Like, it never takes a stance on something. It just gives you both sides of it, and then and how it does that so often pisses me off, right? And so I know that it's not general intelligence yet, because of that one bit of programming where it'll never take a stance on fucking anything.
Right. Well, and actually, just to Bob's point, what Bob just said, I always see new technology as just more advanced programming with more advanced computing power, which is exactly what's going on. I was in a chat, I was in a hang with Chris, Mowdy, and a bunch of other people, and I proposed the idea that AI is the incorrect word anyway, because if we actually, I'm not against the idea that we could eventually have a true machine intelligence, right? Could happen. I don't think it's happening in our lifetime or anytime soon, but at some point, I'm not putting it as in the realm of impossibility. Well, my point is, if that happens, that's not artificial intelligence.
No, that's
That's
actual.
intelligence.
Yeah.
And that blew everybody's mind. But I'm like, I said, what we have now is simulated intelligence, but it's not real intelligence.
Yeah, and some of it apparently is stimulated enough, or it's convincing enough to pass the Turing test.
Right.
And I think that means that we need to take another look at the Turing test.
Well, right, because that's the thing. Basically, large language models been fed human language, right? So of course it's going to answer like a human, because that's what it's been programmed to do.
Yeah.
Another thing too, as far as that goes, because you see more and more robots now that are looking more and more human-like. I don't understand why, unless it's one thing for if there's a certain type of mobility where human type of walking is better, although that's rarely the case. But if it is for a particular function, that's fine. But the idea of trying to make robots more like, because an android is actually, that's what it is. It's an androgynous robot. Basically, it's something that's simulating a human.
It's an androgynous roid?
Yes, basically, yeah. But I don't know why you would want that. Like, the whole point of having electromechanical devices is that they don't get tired. They don't have feelings. They just, do repetitive things really well and very quickly. Why would I want to make, if I want to have a workforce that has emotions, I'll just hire fucking people.
Yeah, I would say that the human form could be improved upon,
For sure.
to where like you would have like longer arms and the appendages that were right for the tasks that you would want the robot to do in a factory. And so when you look at Boston Dynamics Robot Dog and their robots, they're improving on human form. They're approximating it, but like it's not completely what you get out of a human, because if it's going to do all these tasks perfectly, you could just change the shape of the thing rather than try to do all this programming and workaround.
Right. And that's the thing. Now, as far as using that in order to develop prostheses for humans that would basically enhance our abilities, that's cool. But then that's a cyborg, not an android.
Yeah.
Now you could use androids as a waypoint over to because I know I'm not a transhumanist, but there are people who are transhumanists, and that's what transhumanism is all about, is basically using our technology to make humans better at what we do.
I believe that we are within 5 years of a general intelligence that will stall for 3 seconds on any question that you ask it, while the cloud computing goes off at a level of human intelligence, like superhuman intelligence. But once you take the Wi-Fi off, it is not going to perform better than a human. And that's because Moore's law is dead. We don't get twice as many, transistors in the same space anymore, after 3 years. And so since we've got these constraints of build, the ability to tap into the cloud and use that to simulate knowledge that would be held inside, it'll be able to fake it as long as it's connected to Wi-Fi or satellite cell signals. But like on its own, the unit will not be as intelligent as when it's connected like the Borg.
Yeah, I mean, Bob, that's the thing with the whole thing with sci-fi now. Again, and that's another reason why I wouldn't want to have necessarily a true intelligence that would potentially have emotions and everything, right? Because, again, I don't think we're anywhere near that, and I think there's a lot of panic over that. But I certainly, I think making a computer that's really, really good at some task that we give it, and it just does the task that we told it to, that's good enough for me. I think that. Here's the funny part too, as far as that goes. Technically speaking, you want to talk about simulated intelligence, right? Look at the Tomahawk cruise missile.
Mm-hmm.
So Tomahawk cruise missile has GPS guidance, but it also has terrain following radar, and it's actually given images. So it's got a vision system that actually looks at the terrain, and when it sees where it's supposed to go, it goes, okay, well, that matches up with my GPS coordinates, and then it goes kaboom and blows up the target.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and now that is, again, people today would call that AI. I wouldn't. But again, funny thing is, the way the media calls everything AI, what I do is considered AI, and I don't consider it AI either, even though I program things to make decisions based on stimuli that are sent into the system, right? So I've got, I got a system for South Brunswick Water. It reads the level in the storage tank. When the storage tank gets low, it turns on a pump, speeds up the flow rate to a particular flow rate, and then when the tank gets full, it shuts itself off. I mean, simpletons call that AI, but I don't.
I don't exactly want an AI that has emotions, but I do want something that exceeds human intelligence. And the reason I want that is simply, let's say the movie style of wormhole that would allow us to travel to other star systems exists, right? Or something like it that would allow us to get from point A to point B, but we are not going to think of it in our lifetimes. The way to get there would be to create this computer that could think better than us, to explore all the avenues that we haven't, and do it very fast. And maybe this is my real hope. that we will open a little Stargate on Earth, and we will start putting things in the hole, and they will pop out on Mars. And when Elon Musk finally gets a rocket that gets to Mars, we will already be there to give him the middle finger.
That's funny.
Right?
Yes, Phil. A float meter is one way to do that. Particular system I'm talking about is the storage tank and the wells are remote from one another. So we have a cellular network, and the controllers actually communicate with one another. And then one says, I need water, and the guy goes, okay, the night guy, the controller detects that and then sends the water over. So it's a little more sophisticated than that, but that's basically it. Yeah.
From your description right there, I gotta think that the plumber who fixed the back end of my toilet might be an AI technician too. Because, yeah, everything that you said, I was like, you mean a toilet?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly in that case, yes. In that case, it's a mechanical float, and what it does is that when the ball is down, a stopcock lifts up and then allows the water flow, and then when the water level rises, eventually it raises the float, and then it shuts off that's all mechanical.
This is a really, really over-designed toilet.
It's got a logic controller and
yeah.
But one thing I started to say before about the Tomahawk missile. One thing I thought was funny, like when people started getting all upset about drones and drone attacks and everything, and I'm like, no one complained about Tomahawk cruise missiles and their suicide robots. If you think about it, right? They get told to go to a certain spot. They get there, they crash into the target and blow themselves up. That's a suicide fucking robot. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Bob, but I don't know. See, if the AI is trained on Americans, it'll vote for Trump. or it'll stay home because it's lazy and thinks that it's above it. That I'll tell you, the people who voted for Trump I can't stand because they voted for something horrible. But the people who stayed home because they thought it didn't make a difference, I actually have more contempt for them. Because the Trump people voted for something evil in my mind, but people are just like, it doesn't matter. Both sides are the same. It's like they're mentally lazy, and they basically don't give a shit about anybody else, especially the ones that like to think they're allies of some sort or another. Like, no, you're not. You basically said, fuck trans people, fuck anybody in the LGBTQ arena, fuck racial minorities, religious minorities, women of all types. You just said fuck them all because it doesn't matter to me because I don't care. So I'm like, well, then you don't stand for anything. Because at a certain level, I don't know. Like I said, again, I'm happy that some of the people who voted for it are getting hurt by it because, that's better.
So here on Josh's post, where he really fucking bullshit on his post, one of his buddies says, "I'm right there with you. There's a fine line between reality and insanity." Josh liked that post. Boom.
Yeah.
He's a transphobe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unequivocal.
He's a transphobe. So
one of the things that when I have my own 0 to 10 scale, one of the things that keeps me from putting myself as a 10 is the knowledge that I probably have some hidden things even hidden from me in the back of my mind that might be little landmines that Raven and I are going to walk over together, right? Here's my thing. Even when we were talking about just gay and lesbian people. There was this argument about biology, and there was this importance being put on, I was born this way, right? I really feel like the foundational feelings I have from being raised like conservative and libertarian in me, that like I feel like it should not matter, and that people should be able to choose. I'm gay. I'm like, they should be, if they were choosing. We should be free enough. We should have the freedom to choose and be respected.
Right.
For the choice. Like, I don't think that we should have to fall back on biology.
Well, that's the thing. I always wondered every time they said that, like, people tried to make the argument like being gay wasn't natural. I'm like, well, you're wrong. But even if you were right, so what? Right?
You know what's unnatural? Credit cards.
Eyeglasses, cars, fucking peanut butter. And I don't care how organic your peanut butter is. This does not exist in nature. But it's such a bullshit thing, especially and certainly as far as homosexuality, we know it exists in other species. In fact, they found whole pods of gay dolphins and gay porpoises, where it's just a bunch of males sucking each other off. Good for them, yay!
Growing up, my family would raise poodles, and the ones that we had that were family, the 4 that we kept all the time, they were all girls, and they would when they went into heat, and there was no boy poodle around, and they had stuff to get out, they would be humping each other's butts. They'd be humping each other's faces. It was a little orgy on the patio, and I just knew that I couldn't let them on the couch because they'd be spotting.
Molly went into heat before she got spayed the first. So her first heat, she only had 2 heats, one before she got spayed, one after, then never again. But of course, it was just her and Blitzen. And I remember the first time she literally got completely on top of Blitzen and was humping away. And Blitzen wasn't angry; she was just confused, like, "What are you doing?" And we used to tease her, like, "Molly, you don't have any humpy bits. What are you doing?" So we used to call her our little gender confused puppy. And even after that, years later, she would hump Flash sometimes. Even if she wasn't in heat, just like if they were playing rough, she would start humping Flash. So we were like, well, maybe she's a non-binary puppy.
Again, landmines in my head here when we walk over these. But these dogs that we're talking about are domesticated, right? Mm-hmm. The more you domesticate, the more iterations of domesticating animals, the more likely you're going to see them do gay stuff, right? Human beings are being domesticated by our lizard reptilian overlords like Elon Musk and all the CEOs, and we all have zoochosis. We look at zoo animals and how they like go crazy because they're not in their natural habitat, and then we don't accept the zoochosis that we see in ourselves in our daily lives. Just saying, when you're bored, you're going to just start doing weird stuff just because it feels good, and it won't make sense other than you found something that feels good. But if it feels good, you keep doing it.
That's true.
And, I'm not making any judgments when I'm saying that I'm okay with someone becoming gay out of boredom and zoochosis, but I'm saying every iteration of us living in houses with drywall, we're going to see more and more of the population being genderqueer. And it's going to be the majority of people will be genderqueer a couple generations from now, and that'll just be the way it is.
Wait, what the fuck are you talking about?
You ever hear a boomer say, "When I was in high school, there weren't so many queer people"?
No, I mean there were. They just didn't know it.
It wasn't a concept that they were familiar with, so they didn't know how to express themselves. But also, I do think that every successive generation, there will be more queer people because we are domesticating ourselves, and there's no reason for this, big, strong, dichotomous male and like really, really feminine female. You can be whatever and live in this society, and we're just going to see more and more people just choosing to do whatever they want. Each generation will become more genderqueer and not recognize gender roles as much. And you're going to have poodles humping other girl poodles in the face.
That already happens.
Well, and you know, you reminded me of something that I've thought of for a long time. When the transphobes and homophobes and everything, and they think they're thinking like you guys are trying to enforce this strict dichotomy, and where not only where male means man means certain set of personal attributes.
Mm-hmm. And
if you gave up on that, saying, well, if you are a male, then you're a man, and then man means, you fight and you treat people a certain way, you act a certain way, you like certain things. If you gave that up and said, hey, people are, however, gender identity probably wouldn't matter as much, right? Because if you could say, okay, if our society didn't say that, well, we talked before, right, about like tattoo skin, because at the time when she was presenting as a gay man, people were like, oh, you're effeminate. Well, that's only because we have assigned certain behavior as feminine. Well, if we didn't give a shit about that, would it matter so much? I mean, and no one would care. We would just be people, and we would have attributes, and everybody's attributes would be different, and some people would be more one way than another. But once you start tying attributes to some biology, and if that's just made up bullshit, the whole idea of like nurturing means feminine and protection is male. Well, that's not true. There's nothing naturally nurturing that's feminine or protective that's masculine. That's just we made that up.
Yeah. A lot of this shit is just made up. They're social constructs. And that's what drives me crazy about this fucking shit. I don't know.
In fact, you look at other animals, you see it in humans as well. We look at other animals. Who protects the children? The mother. Mm-hmm. She's protective as fuck because those are her kits or cubs or whatever the appropriate word is for that particular species.
I mean, there's the mama bear we all know about, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what you're afraid of when you see cub. You're not looking for Papa Bear. You're worried for fucking Mama Bear that she's gonna fucking tear you apart.
Yeah, Mama Bear will fuck you up.
Yeah, without a thought.
Joe, you made a distinction between like androids and cyborgs.
Yeah.
Right? At a certain point of cyborg, you're going to be more machine than human, right?
Correct. Well, that could be, yeah.
The one person among all of the people that we've talked about here today that would be most likely to become more machine than human, and therefore bring about this discussion about is he still a man, would be the person who knows how to forge things like Iron Man and already has piercings that could be connected to. I'm just saying, and probably the willingness to explore certain attachments and whatnot. It'll be Meridian Frost that pushes the boundary of is that guy still human?
You know, I mean, that's a funny thing you mentioned that because that's one thing I thought of that, you know, because one of the things, and I mean, down this whole AI line and Android line and all that kind of stuff, one of it is actually that, like, could you take a human mind, take what's in our brains that makes us us, and dump it into a computer, or dump it into a computer brain, you know, or somehow transplant our brain without killing us into a mechanical body.
So why am I thinking about the ship of Theseus right now?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Damn you, Michael.
I know. And this is stuff that when you're in this community, you're going to come across these concepts. After 15 years in this community, you should have already come to certain conclusions that would make you maybe, more living towards Raven. Just saying.
You know, not the loving towards Raven thing, but like the style of like argumentation. That's what I was saying before. Like grappling ignorance. Like he tried to use these argument techniques that I've been witnessing and using myself for a decade and a half. And it's like, bitch, don't pull that on me. You know I know better. You know, I mean, it's like logical fallacies and shit. It's like, stop with it. Stop. I see what you're doing. I see the straw man you built. No, I'm not going to bother knocking it down. Fuck you. You know better.
I'm going to say this. This is not a slight at Josh at all. When I see grappling ignorance making the comments that he did and how transphobic they are, I have the same gut feeling as when I found out that Pat Condell was not just an atheist; he was Islamophobic.
Yeah.
And when I learned that, I saw Pat Condell in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Right. Like before YouTube, Pat Condell had books that were only about atheism. And then we got to see the real him when he expounded on all of his beliefs. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I was there at the at a meeting with the Richard Dawkins Foundation people saying, you guys should not have his book on your website for sale. Do you know that he has this video? Right? And that I feel betrayed because Grappling Ignorance's videos were very foundational for a lot of YouTube atheists in their journey in learning about atheism. And so when I see that, I'm like, well, never meet your heroes, for fuck's sake.
Well, this is the thing. Earlier today, actually, I forget, it might have been in the same thread. There was somebody who was like, well, but they're an atheist. They're on our team, kind of thing. And I'm like, there's just because someone doesn't believe in a god like you, or any gods like you do, that doesn't mean you're on the same page on anything else. And as we've come to find, I mean, there's a lot of bigotry within atheists, because again, it doesn't inform whether you're right wing, left wing, all that. You think it might, but it doesn't really.
But it doesn't. No.
And that's actually why the community that we had fell apart, because it was basically the believers kind of gave up for the most part. They've been kind of stomped into the ground, and then those clicks, people needed those clicks, man. And all of a sudden it was like, well, now that we've got this, let's start attacking, and a lot of people I've seen a lot of people try to blame the atheism plus thing, but it started before that. And the thing is, I saw somebody going off about that recently, and I'm like, dude, that was 12 fucking years ago. It's long fucking gone. It lasted for 6 months, and it's been gone for 12 years. You can't be still on that fucking, beating that drum.
13.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting old.
Yeah. So here, I mean, I don't know if I've read this exact part or not, but this is Meridian Frost. He says, I don't believe transgender women are women. I don't believe transgender men are men. I don't believe there's a subset of sex aside from intersex. I believe in compassion, but I don't believe in compelled agreement with metaphysics I don't share. Respect doesn't require me to say 2 plus 2 equals 5. Okay, so nobody is asking him to say 2 plus 2 equals 5. They're asking him to agree with the medical and scientific consensus on gender. And he refuses to do that. Refuses. And instead says, well, there are other experts that agree with him. He said that to me in a comment, that there
Far,
are other
far fewer.
experts that agree with him.
Far fewer.
Far,
It
yeah.
was the same.
There
I
are
mean,
many.
irony here is this is the same thing with like the religious community, right? How many of them? How many like Pendleton, the guy went and got a fucking biology degree just so he could dish on
I was just going to say that.
on evolution,
Yep.
and he doesn't, and he's a fucking fraud. But
Right.
he went and got the biology degree just so he could have the credentials to attack evolution.
I mean, and then there's the Wakefield asshole who started all the vaccines cause autism bullshit. He's been completely discredited, but the damage that he's done, and there are people like, oh, there's an expert that agrees with me. Yeah, Josh. So what? There's experts that agree with you. Well, they're wrong too.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I started thinking about Kazoom. I'm like, Kazoom, you should learn the lesson of Stacey Dash. Stacey Dash was the token black girl, and they all loved her because she agreed with their bullshit until they found a younger, prettier model, and they cast her aside. And then she came back trying to protect you, oh, I want to be black again. And we were like,
yeah. So here, Bob, right? Trans women, she doesn't think trans women are real women. She said that being a woman your whole life is a particular social experience. And I will agree with that. But I will also agree with the being a woman your whole life is a particular social experience. But I will also say that not all women would agree with that. Because womanhood is not a monolith. And everybody's life's experiences are different. And my life's experience being who I was raised to be, and how I was socialized, and how much damage that alone did. I mean, it's like changing gears a little bit. So every Wednesday night I go and I do karaoke at a local place on Wednesday nights. And I have a good time. The guy who does the music, who does the karaoke, right? Nice guy. His name is Justin. Nice guy. But I've decided from now on, I'm going to call him Jim. I'm going to call him Jim every time I see him, because he frequently refers to me as Buddy. Like when I hand him my slip for karaoke for the song, say, "Hey, thanks, Buddy." Right? I mean, I guess it isn't explicitly gendered, but nobody calls women buddy. It's what you call guys. That's a gendered term.
You might say guys referring to women, but you definitely wouldn't say buddy.
Buddy, right? And then I had made a joke where he was talking about, because they had a theme night and it was farmers night, right? And he's like, if you know a farmer, or if you have a farm, or if you're associated with farms, this contest is for you, blah blah blah. And I said, I ate my vegetables. He said, "Oh, you ate your vegetables?" He said, "Good boy." And I just looked at him. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and he said, "Good girl." And whatever. So at the end of the night, when I was leaving, I jokingly said, "You know what? You'll get it. Don't worry about it. You'll get it." And he said, "Oh, you're hung up on the gender thing." I said, "Oh, no, sweetheart. I'm not the one that's got the hang up. I am not freaking out. I'm not like, oh my God, you misgendered me." I jokingly said, "You'll get the hang of it." I said, but honestly, but since you bring it up, you look at me, you think, boy, really? With all this cleavage? Really? You know, and I can understand maybe the voice. I'll give you that, the voice. But come on, really? So he said that I was hung up on it. So to prove my point, I will call him Jim from now on. And when he corrects me, I'm like, it's a name. You don't get hung up on it.
So to
Right.
respond to Bob, um, from the far left place that I'm arriving at this point in my life, Judith Butler, the famous feminist, would say with like post structural feminism that gender is performed, right, and it's not fixed. And if you're going to say that there's a specific experience that women have, trans women get misogyny, they get sexualization, they get violence happening to them, they get disempowerment. What part of the woman experience that you're talking about do they not have? They have all of that for the rage that women have. They really enjoy the Handmaid's Tale. So I'm
I've
calling
had a
them.
woman, I've had a woman say to me, because I don't have a menstrual cycle, I'm not a woman because I don't have a menstrual cycle. And I said, you know what? I might not bleed monthly, but I did bleed for a month.
Well,
There's plenty of women who have devices that keep them from menstruating monthly, who have never menstruated monthly
well,
because they've been on drugs or had a device
Or
their
device, right?
entire reproductive life. Women who go through menopause, on the other end of that, still fucking women.
yeah.
Women without uteri because of whatever happened that made them
Right.
not have one anymore. Still fucking women.
Well,
But,
well,
you know,
let's say,
and my point being, I guess, is, well, yeah, all of that too, right? It's like, okay, fine. So I don't have a menstrual cycle, but I have a hormone cycle, number one. So number two, I had surgery. Part of that surgery afterwards was I bled a lot for a long time, longer than after a pregnancy, because, when after giving birth, I actually bleed for a couple of weeks. Longer than that. And it sucked. It really, really did. But
well, I argued with one woman who was, trying to make this argument like, well, because trans women can't give birth, and I'm like, okay, so that's so like not all, and like I'm like, how many children have you had? And they're like, oh, none. I'm like, well, then you haven't had that experience either. So my friend, my trans friend Raven has just as much experience with pregnancy as you have.
As a cisgendered man, I have not had the experience of conservative pundits being worried about what's between my legs and what's going on down there. But they're always sniffing around women's bits, and they're always sniffing around trans women's bits. That's a shared experience they have. It's conservative people overly worried about what's going on down there and sniffing around down there.
And by the way, pointing out that they have on more than one occasion excluding, going to the sports thing that Josh brought up, they have excluded cis women from women's sports because of their testosterone levels. Cis women, not trans women, not intersex women, cis women that they've excluded. Of course, they tended to be brown, but you know, but yeah, it's like so it's like, yeah, this whole protected, they don't give a shit about any kind of woman.
so I came out, I talked to my mom and I told her, that I was trans and that I was changing my name. And, I went and I got extensions and started wearing like long hair and women's clothing. And by this time I had already been on hormones for about 17 years by that time. And I mean, you guys Remember, I mean, it was my whole thing on YouTube at the beginning of my YouTube career was I was the guy with tits. So I already had them because I had been on hormones for years. So like this whole thing, as far as anybody in our circle, nobody should be surprised by this, right? But anyway, I had been, about a month after coming out and changed the way I dressed and the way I looked. And I went out in public, and it had only been a month. And I was approached, is the nicest way I think I can put it, in the parking lot of a grocery store, where the guy that works there that pushes the carts backed me up against my car,
Oh, I remember you telling me about this one. Yeah.
telling me, how he likes girls like me, and I'm a real pretty one. He wants one like me. And yeah, I nearly pissed myself. And my once it was over with and I was home and I could think, and one of my first thoughts about it with a clear head was I changed how I presented to the world, and the world reacted pretty quickly. And it reacted the way you would think the world would react towards a woman. So kind of goes with what you were saying, Michael.
Mhm.
So, well, I think I need to drop off because I'm starting to fall asleep.
Well, do that in bed.
Even though it was a short week, it felt like a long week.
The last 2 weeks have been rough for me, so I get that completely.
Yeah. So next week's really gonna fucking suck because it's an actual long week.
I gotta find a guest for next week's show.
Not
It's
one
not
of
going to be
overstayed guests that don't even count as guests anymore. He's a real guest.
who. No, you're a co-host. It's just the first time you showed up, but you're invited every fucking week.
I don't think my names are in the credits of that that
No,
opening thing.
not because you never show the fuck up. But I
Yeah.
could always put it on there.
What about
I have
Christine?
editing software, and by the way, I paid this time. I finally did it. I paid for Vegas 21. I have the actual. It's not something I pirated or torrented. No, I've got the real one. And I got to learn how to fucking use it because my intent is to start making videos. I actually have I have one that I'm waiting on some audio for. And so I'm waiting on some audio to finish that up. I have another one that I actually asked the administration at the school that I work at if I could record at the school, as long as there's no students in the video. And I got the okay, so I'm going to be recording a video at work, which I'm kind of excited about. I have another video. It's like a trans panic kind of video in the works. Also, I've downloaded a bunch of images that I need for the video that I've collected. So yeah, so I mean I've got a whole bunch of stuff in it's just between arguing with people I thought I knew, losing friends at work, and trying to go to every college in the country at the same time. I like that. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to go to every college in the country at the same time. Between all of that, as I've been finding it hard to find time to make a video. But I got a whole bunch of them planned.
Well, I think for next week, maybe Christine, if she's available.
I've asked her several times, many times. I send her the link a lot just to join us. I've asked her to be a guest. She never reads the messages. And then when she does, she doesn't answer. And then randomly she'll say, "Hey, how come you don't ask me to be on the show?" And it's just like, are you kidding?
I will. I have her phone number. I will text her, and if she doesn't respond, I'll call her. Because it would be cool to have her.
Agreed.
Well, good night, you fine people.
Night.
And I'll see you next time.
And good night to the not so fine people too. Well, they deserve a good night too. No?
I think so.
Yeah.
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 Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know. But
Yes.
ugly is rather universal, and those people need to have a good night too. Yeah.
Mhm. So I am I'm pretty upset about Josh.
Yeah. It's still sitting with me that he would maybe want to quote like the one stray scientist.
I
You know.
mean, he's had several people who are much more eloquent than I try to talk some sense to him in the comments, and he reacts to them, graciously.
Yeah.
He affords me no such consideration. Um, but to those people, he is like, so it's like, you know what? Your words and actions just say so fucking much.
So when we're looking at like whether or not evolution, is a valid theory, uh, you don't just like say, oh well, I've got this person over here that says it's not, like Ron Paul, who's a medical doctor who denies evolution, right? You look at like the consensus, yeah, but then another thing to look at is the professional body that represents them, because even the consensus could be like 55% of them, on a given
Right,
topic.
right.
You want to know what do the elite scientists in the field think as they've gathered all the data, because people on the ground, like the lower level scientists, they might not all believe the same thing. uh, I'm going to say the majority of biologists in America probably go to church, and they go to church on Sunday, and then Monday through Friday when they're at their job, they kind of throw all that stuff into like a compartment. They don't think about what's in the Bible when they're on the job, right?
Right.
But they'll have some beliefs about biology that aren't the same as the academics or the professional body above them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would follow like the American Psychiatric Association in their determination that gender is not the same as biology, right? And that transgender identities are valid, right? That's the accrediting body. That's the professional organization that gives down the edicts. That's what they're saying, right? But it's not just my profession. Like the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization, all of these organizations will say
They all agree.
trans women are women. And the people who are their spokesmen will say it plainly like that.
Right. Yeah, I know. And that's what's really frustrating, because it's just like,
I get it, it's an appeal to authority, right? But you're on a lower level appealing to the authority of that one outside marginalized person who has wacko beliefs. And I'm appealing to the authority of like where the pyramid of knowledge is at the pinnacle, right?
it's just so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even shit that it's about me. Just the fact that he thinks like that at all. It's just like, who are you? Like, knowledge and information, facts. Josh has always been about facts and about knowledge. And now he's just dismissing it completely for a preconceived idea that he publicly claims, that he's willing to examine and interrogate, but then he doesn't, because he dismisses whatever doesn't agree with his thoughts. I mean, it's clear in the comments. and not just the comments to me, just if you go through all of the comments and you read his responses to people, and if you look at the comments that he likes, it's troubling. It's like, dude, really? You're just fuck science. Fuck it. Just bend it over and fuck it straight up the ass. Fuck science. And it's, yeah, that's unusual. Sad.
Yeah. And again, like I don't even rely on the science of it. Even like to me, that is like if we have to fall back on that, we're losing on like the humanity aspect of things.
Well,
Because
he doesn't give a shit about. That's the thing, is he doesn't give a shit about the humanity, and he said it. Right? He said it. Right? Yes, I respect you. I care about your feelings, but I will not sacrifice the truth. And you know what? Here's the thing: you should be aware of any man who claims to have the truth.
the truth is that self-identification is a core of personhood, and a person's gender identity is a deeply felt internal sense that you can't tell them for them what is inside of them.
But
Right.
he's okay with this is the thing. He's and again, go through the comments again. He says it. He doesn't object, right, to the idea that a man would transition to become a trans woman. What he objects to is that a man can transition to become a woman. For him, the qualifier trans is doing all of the work.
Hmm.
So he sees it not as a descriptive qualifier. He sees it as the identity.
Yeah.
Full stop.
For me, like when you look at it as like the self-identity being the core, it's a woman changing what's on the outside to match what's on the inside, right? And was a woman the whole time, or whenever that realization happened that that person was a woman, and then changing it to match what's on the inside, which matters more because it's about autonomy and humanity.
So sad. So how
You know what? I have been weird.
I know that, but
I now own two American flags that I repaired because I glued the tops on because they kept on popping off while I was trying to hand out flags with the VFW.
oh, good for you. That's an accomplishment.
Just getting out of the house for me was an accomplishment.
Well,
To
I'm
me,
saying owning two flags.
I have a giant coffee cup that has a flag on it.
That doesn't count.
Doesn't count because it's not a flag. It's like a coffee cup.
It's a picture of a flag.
Yeah.
But here's what's interesting too, though. Like those two flags you had, how do you know that those are actual flags and not just pictures of flags on a piece of cloth?
Yeah. For sure. I mean, they were given to me as flags, and I accepted what I was told that they were flags because they've always been identified as flags.
So you've trusted that was their correct designation.
I wasn't the person who made the determination here. I think from their origin, They were just,
So you're just trusting that designation.
yeah,
So
pretty
for
much.
all you know, they could very well be pictures of flags on cloth.
Although I do have this external validation of them because about 1 in 5 people, when I was passing these out outside of a grocery store, about 1 in 5 people didn't want one,
Oh, wow.
and the looks on their faces, like, to me, sometimes expressions on faces say something, and I'm like, yeah, I know right now you're not feeling it, right? And those looks kind of correlated to the color of people's hair, whether or not they had like the Rachel Maddow, you know, going, or like what was on their T-shirt. You know, you could tell that, like, yeah, maybe that person has reasons for not wanting one of these right now, and they knew it was an American flag and they didn't want it.
Yes, Loretta Swit has passed. Hot Lips from MASH.
Oh no.
Yeah.
She was pretty.
Yeah, she was right. She was Hot Lips.
Yeah. I would say that there's a good number of drag artists that use Hot Lips as like a benchmark, and then they end up looking prettier than Hot Lips. You know, there's this like there's this bar that, like, you know.
Bob, I think the right wing has done an excellent job in co-opting the flag,
Mhm.
all of our nation symbols, and the military and law enforcement. I guess those last two count as the national symbols. But anyway, at least these days. Yeah, but they've done a really good job at co-opting those things, and the left put up no fight at all. I mean, understandably, I think it was kind of hard to see that it wouldn't take long where people would just automatically associate anything militaristic or patriotic with the right. Um,
Well, to see me outside a store making sure that every person of color was specifically walked over to and offered a flag, especially their kids. And their kids would just wave it like, ah, I got one, you know? And the smiles that I got for that. To me, it was it just in the community way of making sure that, like, that thing that I was doing didn't lend itself to how co-opted the symbol has been. And there were a lot of East Indian people that came out of the grocery store at that time. That I was there for 2 hours, but I could hear it in their accent, you know, and they were very happy to get one from me and proud to hold on to it. I think your sound went out again because you're too far away.
maybe.
Trying to talk past your boobs.
That's hard. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's actually, see from here.
What's hard?
When I look at the screen, I can see, oh, wow, look at that. How's that? Can you hear me?
Good. You
What?
know, I can hear you. What I can hear you fine.
Okay. Maybe that's fudge.
An hour ago, you were part of the class of 1989. Now you're part of the class of 1989.
How is that different?
It's different like this.
Stretched out. That's what happens when you don't wear a bra.
I did want to tell you that I've been catching up on the MCU after all those years of you guys talking about the stuff, and I have just made it to the first episode of Jessica Jones, and I was horrified that the villain is basically a rapist, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Marvel is supposed to be kid shows. This is not a kid
No.
show Marvel thing.
Oh no, no. Did you watch Daredevil, right?
First season of Daredevil.
And you still thought it was still a kid show?
So it was bloody and it was gruesome, but there
Yeah.
was one scene where a ninja named Nobu has this like knife hook on a chain that he swings around, and when he hooks him underneath the rib and starts dragging him by it, I'm like, oh, this is not a kid
Yeah.
show.
It's not a
This
kid
is
show.
not- I could feel that, like, oh, no, no.
I love Daredevil. Tiny Dinosaur is a fan of Daredevil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have people of the opposite mindset of Meridian Frost in that they want to help uh, young children who are, trying to explore who they are. And when I look at certain shows, I'm like, that's not appropriate for that age group. And I just finished season 2 of The Last of Us, and there's a lesbian scene in there for sure. And being represented in media is important, but that is not for kids. It's from a video game, but it's a very adult thing that went on there. But I just recommended Steven Universe and Owl House to somebody who had to do therapy for a 10-year-old who does want to explore whether or not they are the other gender. And there are shows that help people out with this. And I feel like there's a lot of people doing a lot of good, in just normalizing things at a young age. And even that, I feel like they would want to protect kids from.
Yeah, I mean the argument about protecting kids is usually based on absolute fucking nonsense. And like what Josh said, it's just like I don't believe that children should be having these surgeries. And, well, neither do I. I don't think that too many people, are actually advocating for. Um, they're advocating more for a social transition, which is clothing and hair and a name change that isn't a legal name change, but it's a name change that they can use at school. This is what people are typically advocating for. I don't think any child should have any kind of gender affirming surgery, even if it's a cis girl getting breast implants. No, you wait till you're 18. Sorry, let your tits grow in first before you decide you don't like them.
Okay.
I don't think that's unreasonable. But the argument is always about trans people. And it's more about trans girls than trans boys. But I think all children, I don't think it's a trans issue. I think it is a child issue. No, you should not be getting surgery on your either your primary or secondary sex characteristics before you're an adult. Sorry.
I'm going to say that I know of cases where I would disagree. but generally I agree.
There's always going to be exceptions.
Yeah.
Right.
I know people who are intersex who had both sets of stuff and
Right.
chose one, you know,
Right.
and the choosing is a surgery, you know, and
But like again, those are the exceptions.
yeah, the
Um,
exceptions of a very tiny minority of all the people in the world, like, you know,
right. Exactly.
I would
So
say if there
but
was a
when Josh is saying things like, "Oh, we have children," everybody thinks that, asshole. Come on. I mean, it's
I would
just
say if there was a doctor and a psychiatrist and a counselor involved in this decision, and I heard of someone who was a teenager who had a gender affirming surgery, I'd be like, you know, those professionals all got together and consulted and decided to step out of the way and just let it like there must be a reason behind it. Let's investigate what the reason why was and try to be understanding rather
so
than immediately
there's
say
apparently
there's no reason for these things.
there's apparently was a minor who had SRS and ended up regretting it afterwards. And a psychologist or psychiatrist and a doctor, were involved in that. And the narrative is that this child was basically kind of pushed into it by these professionals. Um, I think those kinds of things. I mean it's horrific.
Yeah.
To have that kind of a surgery at 15 and then afterwards go, I didn't want this. That's horrible. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the professionals involved pushed them into anything. What are the facts behind this narrative? Most of them aren't going to be out in the public. This is about medical stuff for a child. So you have to ask yourself, who benefits from this narrative?
Sometimes people are given autonomy before they're given full adult status. They're given autonomy over a decision in their life, right?
Right.
And freedom doesn't mean protecting people from having regret later. When you have freedom, there is always a risk that you will regret the decision that you make. Me, just at my core, I like to see a lot of freedom.
And I still don't think that, as a general rule, children should be having surgery. And again, I don't know very many people who would disagree with that. I think the closest thing to disagreement that I can even think of finding would be somebody saying things like, but what about in this particular case or in that particular case? And it's just like, well, yes, again, those are exceptions. Every rule has exceptions.
I think the real discussion we should be having is uh, does Donald Trump have a really, really, really tiny penis
Yes, and it's
or mushroom shaped, or is it actually an enlarged clitoris?
depending on how you look at it, they're all enlarged clitorises, aren't they?
I know you have access to this in front of you, but I'm not even going to have you pull it up. I want you to go just by your memory, right? The folds that are descending from the chin of Donald Trump down across his throat right here, those folds, Those are labia. Tell me I'm wrong here. Those are labial folds. Like, I will pull up a picture. Right?
Yeah,
But
I've
I
actually
don't
seen
just
the neck folds right here.
yes.
Yeah, they look like labia. They do. Yeah, yeah. He's a dickhead.
But
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like he has a feature
It's
that
funny, actually.
if you were to just crop the picture and take off his head, right? Take just zoom in on just this part right here, this box. Take that picture, put it on your Facebook, you will get banned
Yep.
because that is labia.
That is funny.
Bob, even if it's a wrinkled ball sack, you're still getting banned.
Oh, I saw an
Dude,
ad. I saw an
pornographic.
advertisement for an electric razor,
Mhm.
and they were demonstrating how a man can shave like everywhere with it. And they had the model, whatever, reach between his legs, and they shot it from the back and underneath. And they used fake plastic testicles to simulate real ones, and he pretend shaved them, and it was just like they look like real nuts. It was just like, how could they get away with that? Like it was just really fucking bizarre.
If they can get away with it, hear me out. We need to find out what is so real that it gets banned, and what is since it was created, then it's not real enough to get banned. Because if so, like anyone with some augmented boobs could just whip them out and
Well, as Josh was apparently so happily told me today, that my genitals aren't natural. Um, so that being the case, I should be able to just post pictures of them all over the internet, right? I mean, it's not real. No, am I wrong?
you had a really bad run-in with a friend there. I'm like, oh, ow. Like, it doesn't really cost you anything to just respect people and not be a dick. Like,
You didn't see that comment about?
I didn't look that far, and now I'm like, okay, maybe we'll take him down to where Joe had him on my scale. But yeah,
See if I can find. I don't remember if it was on his post or on Peach's, but yeah, it was like, what the fuck? Um, might not have been on this one. I don't want to spend a million years looking for it. There's just so many fucking comments at this point. Yeah, here it is.
okay.
I said to him, so let's not conflate man with male. While they may seem interchangeable, it really depends on context. Yes, biologically, I am a male, but that's irrelevant to how I move through the world and my interactions with people I come in contact with. Also, there's not much about my body that identifies my biological classification, considering I possess the primary and secondary genitals associated with a biological female. What purpose does it serve to identify me as a man? He said, you don't naturally possess female genitals. So I responded with, "You're a transphobe." Because what else do you say to that? You know?
I remember the original novel for Jurassic Park, right? So the reason why Jurassic Park became a horror story of a novel was they took DNA of dinosaurs and they tried to, revive it. And what DNA they could not like retrieve, the little gaps in it, they spliced it with frogs, right?
Right.
And these frogs were able to change their gender if there were too many of one gender of the frog, one sex of the frog, one gender of the frog, right?
Which is
And
something that happens in nature.
it does happen in nature, right? And so what happens is a whole bunch of one type of frog will get together and then they'll bully one of the frogs into turning into the other gender. Like, that's how it works. Like, one of them has to realize that there's all of these more dominant of that gender frog to want to, you know, turn into that other gender for, because those other ones are telling it externally, hey, we're bigger and you suck at being this, so turn into this. So
And you're a sissy.
Yeah.
Yeah. They pick on the sissy frog.
And so this is a natural process, right? The frog that turns did not just decide on its own. It was bullied into the decision.
Right.
Just like in Jurassic Park when they were all in the cages, right? The velociraptors are really mean, and the meaner ones bullied one of them into flipping, and then they were procreating, right? Like, that's
Tie that to my comment, please.
just saying, like, you knowing who you are,
Right.
you've said that you have received some bullying that happened, right? And
I
then,
mean, like in my life?
yeah, in your life, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
tad, or more than a tad,
Yeah.
a wee bit, right?
Yeah. When I was young, I was actually bullied pretty badly. Actually, for the school that I am in, like in the history of the school, it was actually one of the worst cases of bullying that they've ever had. It went on for several years, and there was multiple police involvement, and yeah.
So alongside of uh,
So you're saying I'm a frog?
alongside of what you had already inside of you that was pliable to the change, you had these natural reasons for wanting to go to that way where, like, you're not supposed to have the same stuff as you have after the change.
So first, let me say, Ribbit, that I completely disagree with your entire premise, Ribbit.
Okay.
And
what
Ribbit.
yeah, here I am, really really hoping nobody takes this analogy way too far, Ribbit. And oh goodness, no.
And you
So
fucking fly. I'm the good.
when we're talking about how the minority of the minority of the minority are these people that we're talking about with should or should not have a surgery, right? I'm saying the intersex ones should have, the access to an intercession if they, or if they're really young, their parents decide, it's in their best interest to have this intercession. It could be just a hormone therapy. It could be a little bit of a snip, right?
Like, I mean, I personally,
When I'm looking at the numbers of who is intersex in America, it's I just Googled it at 18 per 100,000, right? That's like 6 million people.
it's nothing to sneeze at.
So,
I mean, you could sneeze at 6 million people
having
at the
a
light.
rule of, we shouldn't really be accepting of young people having a surgery. I'm like, nope. Actually, there's a lot of people who should have some sort of intercession if they're being treated at that age, if it's recognized, because a lot of it won't even be recognized.
For those who are recognized, and where their gender might be ambiguous, or sex might be ambiguous, is probably more correct. At minimum, they should have the services of some kind of psychologist. They should be talking to somebody in some therapeutic sense to, at minimum, at least, to help them figure out what they feel is the best for them. And also, I think there should be a certain amount of, if they have ambiguous genitals, or they have two separate ones, what's functional and what's not. If the penis isn't functional, maybe you'd be better off to get rid of it. But I think that's a different issue than like trans.
Yeah, when it comes to women's health care and gender affirming care, our governor here in Colorado had to sign into law things to protect the licenses of all of us who do counseling or therapy in any way. Because if we give the care here and then the child moves to Florida, and then it gets found out in Florida that there was some clinician, they'll try us in Florida, you know. And so we also have laws here that say if you lose your license in a state where the thing that you lost your license for is actually protected in Colorado, you can apply for a license in Colorado and move to Colorado. So we're about to get a whole bunch of abortionists, a whole bunch of advocates for women's health, a whole bunch of therapists who do gender affirming care just for like counseling, right? We're going to take them all in, and that's okay if the rest of the world has a vacuum of caregivers. We'll have plenty of them here.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, at least it won't be Canada sucking up all of our smart people. Keep hearing about Canada being the destination.
Yeah, I can't even go to Canada myself.
Why is that?
I don't have a passport, and apparently I can't get one.
Is that because things don't match?
Well, I mean, my birth certificate now says female, but it's not my original birth certificate. Federal government doesn't recognize that. So.
Okay.
Oh well.
Did they just lock that down for this administration?
Yeah, it was one of Trump's first executive orders.
So You've got
for as far as the federal government is concerned, you are what you were assigned at birth. Actually, they went further. They said you are what your sex was at conception.
which is just as Joe said, really stupid.
Female for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So since they said that, I can't get a passport. Land crossing in personal vehicle does not need a passport. Yes, it does. Last time I went to Canada, I had to have, at minimum, the passport card, which at the time I had.
Did I tell you about my my other idea that maybe we could start? You know how they have those change.org petitions?
Yeah.
My idea is that we target McDonald's, right?
Okay.
And what I want McDonald's to do, maybe, in recognition of Pride Month, we could do this. I need McDonald's to come out with a quadruple quarter pounder. And we're going to call it the McPounder. Yeah, the McPounder, right?
Okay.
Like, I don't want anyone to go to jail for it. I just want,
You just want a 1 pound burger.
no, I don't want anyone to go to jail for it.
Oh, well, I think somebody should just do it.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if we petition McDonald's to make the McPounder,
Right.
So,
Right. You think it would
one of our
bring it about 4 times faster?
yes.
Yeah. So apparently, for the last couple of months, there has been like a meme thing that's been going around where people don't mention, anybody's name. They just say, "I wish someone would just do it," and everybody knows what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I haven't posted a meme that says it, but I do agree that somebody should just do it. Like, there's got to be somebody that's willing to just do it. Like Nike, just do it.
As therapists, we often ask our clients the magic question, which is
I don't believe in magic.
no, the magic question doesn't require you to believe in magic. It just says, if you woke up tomorrow and magically everything in your life was corrected and put right, what would that look like for you? And I can't ask that question for another 3.5 years because it's kind of a loaded question. It'll,
Okay, it's like for me, if I were to wake up tomorrow, what would make everything right would be if somebody would just do it. Just do it. Do it too. Mountain Dew.
And I know that a lot of people have made jokes like this, right? And a lot of people have, joined in on the meme. But for this one moment in time, I actually feel like if it happened afterward, no one would back down from their participation in the meme.
No.
The polarization in America has become that bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is why I'm going to stand outside the store at the VFW, pass it up like, hey.
No, I mean, it's our democracy is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Like even if he were to or if this particular person were to, succumb to a McDonald's induced heart attack, that will not change how deeply in trouble our democracy is.
Yeah.
It's bad. Um, and it is possible that it cannot be saved at this point. I think the damage is far too extensive. And that may have been the case even without Donald Trump winning a second term.
The first one was enough.
First one was enough.
Okay.
Because it wasn't just that. Like it wasn't, Donald Trump was not president in his first term in a vacuum.
Mhm.
We had Fox News and Alex Jones did irreparable harm, I think, to our country. I mean, there are people that believe that, frogs are turning gay.
And they're not the kind of people who would have read Jurassic Park. They would have waited for the movie.
Yeah.
I actually have one member of our family that is from south of the border because she's a Chihuahua, and for Cinco de Mayo we got her a little hat
See?
right there, right? And just to be even more authentic for her, to celebrate her heritage, we got her new poop disposal bags, and I'd say
Yes.
it's fitting for somebody who has that dissent, that they would probably feel like Trump could eat shit.
So my older sister last weekend had a gathering at her house. It was a birthday party for her daughter who had passed away 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, everybody gathered, they made burgers and there was birthday cake, and they let balloons go that had messages to her. And I mean, it's sad, it's touching, it's, part of you feels like you're not going to fully heal. And then part of you thinks maybe you shouldn't fully heal. Um, it's just a hard situation. Well, my brother was there, and my brother is a Trumper. My brother is very upset about my transition. It somehow affects him. I don't know how. Anyway, so he was sitting outside having a cigarette, and Kai was outside and kind of running around being a little terror. And I said to my brother, he reminds me of you sometimes. And he said nothing in return. So I said, he doesn't listen. He does whatever he wants. He's tough as nails. And he just doesn't give a shit. And he said nothing. And I was like, well, fuck you then. And I walked away. Can't say I didn't try. So yeah.
How's your mom doing?
She's all right. She thinks she's dying all the time. And I mean, I want to tell her we all are, but that's not helpful. So. Yeah, you got quiet.
Yeah. I was just thinking about my next week and everything I have planned to do. I'm getting a different kind of ID because as a disabled vet, you get to go on post and use the commissary and PX, but you got to
Yeah.
go get the ID.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go get one.
Very good.
But yeah, just wanting to interact with my community and all that. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm there where I want to heal, but I've seen people who don't want to, in the community, just like you can feel it.
All right, it's like 12:30. I think I'm gonna end the show. If that's all right with you. Can you make it next Friday?
No,
Well, then fuck you then.
it's my nibbling's birthday.
Okay, that's fair.
Wait. She doesn't watch, but this is being supportive.
Nice,
It's a nice, big, huge throw,
nice. Yeah.
but the biggest one I could find. But yeah,
I have to get a new pride flag for outside. Mine's all like dull and stuff, but I can't find any that are nice. Like they're all like this really cheesy, cheap, like really
nylon,
flimsy. Huh?
nylon.
Yeah, it's a heavy duty. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that for next year's Pride cycle, you need to plan months in advance, but you choose which cloth you want, go on Alibaba, order a ton of them, and make sure all your friends have, good quality ones.
Well, I'm not that like a 3 foot by 5 foot flag, a decent size one.
They got them.
The one I have, it's like all double stitched and it's heavy duty. And I mean, I've had it for 25, about 25 years. And the only thing that's really wrong with it is just that the colors are faded.
Okay. Perhaps you could re-dye the colors.
Oh, no, that would take more talent than I have.
Yeah, and private equity has gotten rid of all the good craft stores.
Yeah, there's that too, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, Michael's still exists.
Yeah. Let's hope that private equity doesn't get their hands on that.
All right. I'm
All right.
like sweating and they look like shit, so it's time to get off camera.
Oh, well, shit. If that was the bar,
That's a bar. I don't know. All right, everybody. All right, Michael.
all right.
Good night.
Night.
End stream. See.